Good morning, everybody. Hi, I'm Paul Pape of Paul Pape Designs. Many of you know me. Thank you for joining me today. But today is a very special stream. We're going to be doing a work-along project using Polyform's Super Sculpey clay. And for those of you who don't know, Super Sculpey is just a polymer clay. Okay, it's just one of a series of brands. But I myself personally love Super Sculpey. It's something that I've been using for well over 15 years. And today we're going to actually do a work-along project. And this one's actually brought to you by Polyform, the makers of Super Sculpey. So while my face is really big here, let's actually dive into the project right away. And I want to kind of walk you through a little bit of how to tell if clays are good, how they're, whether or not they're okay to work with, if they need to be, tempered or worked with or whatnot. And then I'm also going to go through a different variety of products that are available through Polyform and Super Sculpey as well. So we'll stretch that down and we'll pop me in that little corner down here because nobody needs to see Big Paul there. All right. So first off, this is the little guy that we're going to be all working on today. I wanted to keep it somewhat cartoony. Yeah, the figures behind my head, those are écorché models, which are really, really nice. Thanks, Dylan, for that mention there. It's great for knowing anatomy and muscle structure, which is something that we all need to work on. But knowing that today is just kind of like a intro to Super Sculpey, or intro to sculpting for those of you who may have no skill or may be getting into a lot of skill. Good morning, Swanee. I wanted to start with something that's a little bit more cartoony so that we can be a little bit loose with our anatomy. But if you want to get really high and detailed into your anatomy, I strongly recommend either écorché models or just getting yourself a good anatomy book, or not even a book. We've got the internet, so just check everything out there. So this is what we're going to be working on today, and we're going to be doing something called multi-bake process, okay, in which we take a product, we'll sculpt a little bit of it, we'll put it in the oven, bake it, bring it back out, add to it, put it back in the oven. And what that's going to do is that's going to ensure that the pieces are really, really strong and fully baked before we go into the painting process. The other thing that's going to allow us to do is work on a piece while it's sitting in the oven, so we're not sitting here staring at each other for about half an hour. One thing that I want to bring to your attention, though, is, and a lot of people don't know this when they're starting out, is that polymer clay eventually dries out. It doesn't really go bad, it just dries out over time and it becomes harder to work with. And while there is ways to lengthen the life of it, I want to show you what good, clean, fresh clay looks like, and the difference between that and clay that's been out too long, that's dried out, that's not necessarily the best to work with. So this here is Super Sculpey, okay, and it is a flesh-colored modeling clay, a polymer clay, all right, and it comes in a box. I buy 8-pound boxes of it. You can see it there. That's a giant box of polymer clay that I got here in the background, as well as some other ones that we have there. But I typically buy that large boxes of it because I go through a lot of clay at a time. So, but normally it comes in a little 1-pound box like this Super Sculpey firm that you see here, and inside of it is just a little block of clay, about 1 pound, and it looks something like this. Usually it's about 4 layers thick. Now, the way that whenever I'm buying polymer clay, especially if I'm buying it at an art store or someplace that I can get my hands on it, which I strongly recommend that you get your hands on it, I open up the box and I always test it. It's never wrapped because actually polymer clay, excellent, great. Yeah, it probably is. I've got one of those too. This is Great says, I forgot I had a brick of Super Sculpey. It's probably hard enough to break a car window. Maybe. I mean, it's possible. This is an older brick. This is a 1-pound brick. I actually got this one probably about 4 years ago, and I keep it just for this demonstration. And it kind of shows you the difference between the two. I mean, they still look identical, all right? But whenever you get a box, or you're looking at getting a box of polymer clay, the first thing I do is I do something called the test. And it's open. You can just go in there and just pinch off a corner of it, okay? And you want to, good morning, Beeves. You just want to go and you want to roll it into a quick ball like this, and then you want to do the pull test, where you grab it between your fingers and your thumb, and you want to pull. All right, and you see how that tapers off like that? That's the sign of a good, fresh clay. All right, that's a good, fresh polymer ready to be worked with polymer clay. I can do it again really quickly. You don't want to overwork it. You don't want it to get warm. You just want to work it quick enough, and then we're going to pull. And you see how it tapers off into that nice teardrop shape? That's a good polymer clay. Now we're going to do the same thing here to this older one. And we're going to break off a corner, okay? We're going to do the same thing. We're going to work the same amount, all right? And then we're going to do the pull test. And you see how it doesn't taper? It just kind of breaks there. And we get that nice chunky break in the clay. We can kind of see it there versus the nice taper that we get on these pieces here. Thank you, Lefty. I do appreciate that. Thank you for the host. Oh, it's a raid. Excellent. Thank you for the raid. All right, now. Thank you for the host as well. All right, so I want to show you the same thing. It's not just, it just doesn't hold true with Super Sculpey. This is the exact same test you can do with all the different clays, okay? So this is an older version of Super Sculpey, but let's get this out of the way. Now, some people say, okay, well, Super Sculpey itself is a very soft clay anyway, so you can do this nice little test where it just gets really thin, kind of stretches out, and that's true. It is a softer clay. It's probably their softest clay that they've got. So let's actually go to Firm. We're going to pull some Firm. This is a fresh box of Firm. I actually got this from Polyform. And if you look over here in the chat that's going on the side there, you'll see that there is it's a promo code going on. Paul Pape Designs, all one word. If you go to sculpey.com, you can actually use that, get 20% off between now and June 30th off of a one-time purchase. So this is a fresh box of Firm, okay? So this is their hardest version of the Sculpey product that you can buy. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to pull off a corner of it, okay? And we're going to roll it into a ball. Good morning, Scrumble. All right, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to do the pull test, okay? And it does break, okay? And we expect this to, because it is a firmer version, okay? If we go back here, this is the old one, all right, that we like, all right? But with this Super Sculpey Firm, we expect it to be a little bit firmer, but it still has that polymer in it, and you're still going to get a stretch out of it, and that's what I like about it. Now, the difference between this and this is that this one here is a softer clay, and it's kind of harder to work on if you're trying to get really fine details, because it is a softer clay. You're going to press into it a little bit further, you're going to get a lot more fingerprints, and a firmer clay is going to allow you to do a lot more stronger detail, you know, crisper detail, okay? But you can see we're actually pulling this, and we can get that same teardrop shape out of this clay, okay? Just got to warm it up a little bit, okay? So here we go. We've got, and this is the hard one. This is the one that's too old, okay? And even if we warm it up, I'm going to warm it up here. I'm going to work it with my hands here so we can get a nice warm piece of clay, all right? If you can do a skull with the gray and then use the soft stuff to do skin. You probably, Dylan asks, I wonder if you can do a skull with the gray and then use the soft stuff to do skin. You could, absolutely. There we go. And it gives you a similar feeling as the Firm. But the problem is this clay is still the softer version of the clay. So Adantarial asks, can you mix both of them together? Absolutely, and I do it all the time. If you like Firm, okay, but you're working on something, but it's too firm for you, it hurts your hands. I mean, some people have arthritis, that kind of thing, and this is just too hard to work with. But the Super Sculpey tends to be too soft. You can blend the two together, and you can make your own blend so that you get a nice in-between there. Now, also, Swanee is giving up the ghost before I can get to it, but yeah, you can see it mixes and blends. But they also now have Super Sculpey Medium Blend. Okay, and the Medium Blend is exactly what we just blended here. So we can blend these two together, so it's a perfect mixture of the medium and the hard. And the nice thing is it's still that neutral gray color. Some people have a hard time working with the brightness of the regular Sculpey color because it's hard to see the highlight and shadow, all right? The medium and the Firm come in grays, and gray is a nice medium, like a neutral color to work in. So if you want to get highlights and shadows, be able to see all the detail that you're putting into it, a gray is a good medium to work in. Super Sculpey is great if you're doing a lot of flesh tones and you don't want to paint the whole thing. But this is the medium, and if we go and do the same pull test on this, and you can already tell, I mean, this is a good, and this is straight from Sculpey.com, guys, and I gotta say, I am highly impressed with the freshness of the clay. I buy a lot from local art stores where I live, and look at that pull test that I just did there. Look at that. It's a perfect blend of the two. I love it. Okay, I buy from a lot of art stores, and a lot of times they don't have a high turnover of the polymer clay, and so it can be pretty dry. Okay, it is nice, and I'm hesitant a lot of times to buy online because, especially through like Amazon or those places, because I can't tell how long it's been sitting in the factory or in their warehouse, hot warehouse, boiling off all of the polymer. Okay, So I strongly recommend going to Sculpey.com and ordering your clay from them. You're going to get the freshest batch, and you'll know that it's good. And then here's a little secret, guys. All right, you get the freshest batch from Sculpey.com, and then the nice thing that you can do is you can take this when it comes out of the box, just like this, fold it in half. Take some aluminum foil or some saran wrap, some kind of clear film, something like that. Wrap it up nice and tight. Throw it in your freezer. Okay, and the great thing about that is once it's in the freezer and you freeze it hard, it will stay exactly in this stasis. It's like the carbonite freezing of polymer clay, and whenever you take it out and let it get back to room temperature, it'll be as soft as the day you put it in there. And that is an awesome tip. So you don't, you may be working on a project where you only need this much clay, and then you're not going to get back to it for another 6-8 months. That's the great thing about this. Wrap the rest of it in aluminum foil or into some saran wrap, something like that. Throw it into the freezer, and then there you go. It's safe to be around your food. I say wrap it so that it doesn't absorb anything. Don't wrap it in paper, because the paper will absorb the polymer that's inside the polymer clay. But wrap it in aluminum foil or saran wrap, and then just place it in your freezer, put it in the back, let it get hard as a rock, leave it there until you're ready to use it, take it out, and then there you go. You've got clay as fresh as the day you bought it. So Swanee says leaching. Yes, leaching. All right, so here we go. So we've got 3 different types of polymer clay here. All right, we're gonna start with a base, because I like to start from the ground up on my figures. Okay, and Elbert says, nice tip, will freeze from now on. I strongly recommend it. I got that one from because I buy these 8-pound boxes of it, and there are weeks where I'll go through 4 to 5 pounds of clay, but there are other weeks where it kind of comes and goes. And I was always concerned about getting that one brick that's been sitting there for too long, and then you get this brick that's pretty much unusable. And then what do you do with it? Well, I don't want to throw it away because it's good hard-earned money, so throwing it in the freezer is a great way to deal with that. Now, there is a polymer extender that you can buy to add to older Super Sculpey to soften it up. It's a softener that you buy. It comes in a little bottle, and it's clear liquid. My personal take on that is it does work to make your clay softer, but to me it is like adding water to stale bread. Okay, it's still considered bread, it's still soft, but it's not going to be as good as if you froze it and you had it fresh off there. Okay, so you can use it. I wouldn't ever use it for a finished product clay. I could use it for a core, I could use it for maybe a base on something, but I wouldn't use it if I was actually going to do any kind of sculpt that I was going to try and sell or anything like that. I just think it gets too crumbly, and you'll never get that polymer really, really, truly worked in. Other people may disagree with me, and that's fine. I mean, this is just one man's opinion, but in my experience, and I've used food processors to blend it in there, I've worked it with hands, I've used my pasta rollers, I've used all those tools to try and get that polymer back into it, and I still has that feeling. It's just not quite like fresh Super Sculpey. Okay, now you got sago stale bread, but it's still edible, and so that's what I want to avoid. So use that freezing tip. It's gonna end up being great for you guys. All right, one of the other products that they sell is this bend and bake clay. All right, now I've used this stuff before. It's actually kind of fun. What happens is once you've cooked it, it's still got a little bit of flexibility to it. All right, now if you're building things that are going to get some movement, if you like really thin pieces that somebody may bump, and when Super Sculpey or firm or medium get completely baked, they become a little bit fragile. It's not impervious to breakage. This bake and bend clay is really kind of useful in those instances. So we're actually going to do some leaves and stuff using the green bacon blend so that we can have it so that if somebody, if we do brush up against it and such, it will actually have some flexibility. Another product that they sell, which we may use for the eyeballs, because I think, hey, why not, is this glow-in-the-dark Sculpey product here, okay? You know what, actually I'm going to avoid this. I'm going to give this one away. How about we do that? At the end of the stream here, if you stick with me the entire time, I'll give away this box of glow-in-the-dark polymer clay for anybody who's here. We'll just do a nice little raffle giveaway type thing, and somebody will walk away with that. I think that'll be awesome. So let's get started. So as far as tools go, there are some definites that I use all the time. Everybody is going to have their personal favorite tools. Okay, so I'm going to say these are my favorite tools. They are by no means your favorite tools. These may not be things that anybody uses except for me. All right, but the tools that I like to use are this one here, which is a scoop on one end, a shallow scoop, and a knife on the other. Not sharp, just pointy. Okay, and then I also use knitting needles. Okay, and these are aluminum knitting needles. I have two different sizes, two different gauges, all right? And you can see they're very used and abused. One side leaves pointy, and the other one I curl just a little bit. And the reason I like the aluminum ones is because my hands tend to be warm, and so when you're working with the polymer clay, if your hands are really warm, the clay gets softer. And so I use these aluminum ones because the aluminum dissipates the heat so that I can actually smooth things down. Master Biggles says, my favorite tool is the humble spoon. See, to everyone they're on. Swanee says it's true. Tools for sculpting are very personal. It is absolutely true. There it is, bump the camera. The other tool that I use a lot is a number 11 craft blade. All right, this is an X-Acto blade. I just like the handle on this one a little bit better, but I thought only I use knitting needles. Oh no, Bex. Everyone, no. I love the knitting needles as one of my tools. And the funny thing is the only reason I use knitting needles is because when I was making those rock figures, when I first started sculpting 15, 20 years ago, I asked my mother, I said, I need a pointy thing so that I can, blend the tools and kind of move the material around. And she's like, well, all I've got are these old knitting needles. And I'm like, I'll make them work. And I've used them ever since. And I've tried to find things to work that are similar. Nah, these are them. These are my favorites. Okay, so these are my 3 favorite tools that I use here. Now, some other things, I've made some tools over the course of time. Again, I've been using these. Toothpick for the small stuff. I do have a very small pick that I use for the small stuff. You can see here, I've got the and it's used and abused. But this one also has a nice cup on the end of it so that I can create hemispheres. So you load that with clay, and then you pop it off, and we get a nice little hemisphere in there as well. And I've got 3 different gauges of these. These are really handy to have. But I also have this, which is a rake. And I built this out of brass. I found a brass tube and some tiny little brass rods here. And I just pressed them together, put a little solder on there, and then I've got this rake. And you can see it is also lovingly used. So good morning, Monty. Thank you for joining the stream. And so I'll use this one a lot for just creating some wood grain technique or for just general raking. Now, one of my other tools that I use, I make a lot of dragons. I make a lot of things that have to be covered in gold on the floor, that kind of thing. And so I got tired of having to put little tiny dots in there, so I actually made this tool as well, which is a larger version of the rake, but with tiny little tube holes on there. So I can take material like this, and I can actually go in here, and except I deleted it all, there we go. You can see, kind of hard to see, there we go. We can see that we've got some of it just creates a nice little texture there. So, and then lastly, my favorite tool is one that I made. I make a lot of wedding dresses for cake toppers, and one of the things that happens to occur in a lot of wedding dresses is that there's lace, and lace is hard to sculpt when you're sculpting tiny little people, or it's tedious, okay, and especially when you're working on really, really tiny pieces. So I created this lacing tool, and what this is just a regular loop tool, and I found this bead at a craft store, okay, and I'm actually going to let's pull out the gray clay so we can actually see this here, okay, and I'm going to show you what this does. And this is a metal bead, and it has this way, it has a nice texture on it, okay, it's got this little flower texture on it, and it's filled with clay because I use this thing all the time. So what we do is we can push the material over there, and we can create a nice texture on there. Now the other thing that we can do is we can just not go over it, and we can create a pattern that runs over it, and you can see the little hearts that are in there. See, heart-shaped type of lace here. And then we just, if we want to make it smaller, we just go over it again and again, and we create a smaller texture. Okay, and then what's really nice about this is if you go in and you dry brush it when you're done, when you go in to paint it, you go and dry brush it over it with a metallic or a shimmer white, especially for like a wedding dress. That is really gonna pop. And so that is it's a very handy tool. Swanee says she uses stamps as well. I have a lot of stamps. I actually brought some out here. One of my favorite stamps to use, especially when I'm doing ground texture, is this stonework stamp that I have here. And you can use it one of two ways. You can press the cobblestone in so that you have raised brickwork here, or scales, rando scales, okay? Or if you use the other side, you can do raised brick with the mortar set low. So we can do it either direction here. So do it this way. Okay, so that gives us a two different types of detail there, and these are stamps. And I've got all sorts of stamps. Now this is actually taken from a model building kit. You can go out and buy these. I've got bricks, I've got whatnot, but this is one of them. And then the other thing is what's really cool is, especially with this bacon blend clay that a lot of people don't think of, is that if you put a pattern into this bacon blend clay and then you bake it, then you've got yourself a flexible stamp. So you can make your pattern, or make the pattern on Sculpey, sculpt it out as a positive. So if you want to go do a bunch of scales, you can go in here and sculpt a bunch of scales onto your clay, bake this, then take your bacon bend, put it over the top, okay? And then when you pull it off, then you'll have the negative of it, bake that, and then you've got a flexible pad so that you can do your own stamps, okay? So it's just versatile material here. All right, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna start with the base on creating our little figure here. The reason I want to do this, I want to show you some cool techniques on how to do dirt and earth and all that fun stuff. Swanee says, I love doing that. I have so many handmade clay texture stamps. That's right, and it's a great way to use scrap clay. Absolutely, so if you have that redone clay, that old clay that you added the polymer extender to, that would be a great use for it, because it's not going to be in a finished product. Pardon me while I drink the water. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with 2 layers of the clay. You can use this, actually I probably don't even need that much. I can probably start with just this little amount here. Another product that Sculpey makes is they make a bunch of handy tools, okay? Now, again, tools are very personal things. So whether you go out and you buy your tools from Polyform or not, your Super Sculpey ones, there are plenty of tools that they make. One of them is actually this roller here. They make one of these. You can get this in the cake baking aisle if you can't find the one from Sculpey, okay? And what this is going to do is, it is basically a smooth plastic rolling pin, and I use this to create uniform thicknesses on my base. I also found these handy dandy square dowels here that I'm going to use, and that's what's actually going to allow me to smooth this out and flatten it. Now here's the thing, we need to be able to pull it off without overly, it's a baking roll, absolutely, Rillians, yes. So one of the things that I've noticed over time is if I go and roll this out, especially if I want to do something like a cookie cutter and I want it to be perfectly round or something like that, well, I've got to peel it back up. Okay, now there's 2 different ways that you can deal with not having to peel it up and distort the figure, especially, or the base or whatever, since it's so soft. One of them is you can actually use this handy dandy work and bake clay mat available from Sculpey. And what it is it is a silicone mat, okay, that comes flat, and one side is actually really shiny smooth. Now this is a great piece that you can use to get a really nice shiny texture on one side. The other side is actually a fiber mat, okay, so it'll help hold its shape. The other thing that you can do with this is you can use this as a texture pad, okay? If you want something that's got a really high sheen to it, you can roll it out on this. And what you can do is you just take this here and you put it underneath your material, okay? And then you can roll it out, flatten it off there, and then we're going to roll it out a little bit, and it's going to basically allow you to, all you got to do is remove this. You can just go throw this whole thing into the oven, okay, and it can cook up to 500 degrees. So we know that at 275, where you're supposed to bake Super Sculpey, it's going to be okay. I actually bake mine at 265 because I know that my electric oven peaks, okay, and this is only because I've been using the same oven for 15 years. I know how hot and cold it gets. So what happens is that it spikes when the heating element is on and gets up to around 275, 280, and then it comes down to about 265. So when it's baking, for the most part, it stays at that nice comfort 270, 275. Okay, that floppy circle is so beautiful. No, so this is but this is, I'm going to show you another technique. If you don't have this handy thing lying around, which a lot of people don't, you know, and if you're in a rush, you don't have time to wait for it to come from Sculpey.com, you can use my favorite go-to, a piece of paper. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll take this same piece of clay, and I want it to be a little bit more round, so I'm going to kind of squash it that direction, and then we're going to also flatten it this way. And then instead of baking the paper, you don't want to bake the paper, what you can do is, and I'm going to move the camera out a little bit so you can see this. Okay, you just take the paper and then you have it, and you don't have to worry about distorting the base. Okay, I know that paper can't go in the oven. Mr. Biggles, yes. Yes, these are just extra things. Okay, you don't need to have Swanee Adontario says, oh man, I live in the wrong country, I need all the things. No, you don't. You know, sculpting is a very personal. I'm just saying these are things that are available, but you can also find regular things to use around the house. Mr. Biggles says paper can't go into the oven. Swanee says it actually can go into the oven. It can go into the oven, but the problem that you're going to run into with paper in the oven, especially with a polymer clay, is that the polymer is going to it's going to put off humidity as it cooks, just a little bit, but enough that the paper underneath could wrinkle or can curl. Okay, and so that may actually distort your piece, so you don't necessarily want to do this. All right, so you can use parchment paper is another good suggestion. Honestly, I just take the paper, peel it off, go throw this into the oven. I do cook on a silicone pad in my oven. Okay, I always cook on a silicone pad, and that keeps the bottom from burning. Okay, I do have a piece, if I can find it, lying around here. I wasn't going to show it because it's used and abused. Here it is, right in front of me. This is a piece that I use. This is a heart-shaped piece of base that I use, and all these holes in here are because I use a lot of armatures, and I just throw this piece into the oven to bake my pieces on an armature that can't stand on their own, that I don't want to keep baking the base. Now if you look on the bottom here, amongst all the silver tape that's on there, it is just blackened, and that is because the bottom has been cooked so many times. But this thing is hard enough that I could drop it on the floor and it will not break. Okay, this is what is called over baking with polymer clay, and that's for a different stream. Okay, so what we have here is we have our weirdly shaped hamburger patty, and I think that's actually great for what we're going to do here, because I want to go with something that's a little bit more organic, something that looks like dirt, okay, that our little guy is going to be standing on top of. Okay, so I don't need it to be a perfect circle. I actually kind of want it to be an imperfect circle, and the best way to do that is just to kind of roll it up, smash it, roll it out, mark it with a B, put it in the oven for baby and me. All right, so here we have our irregular shaped thing, and I don't even mind the little bit of cuts that are inside the side of it and whatnot. I think that actually will help make it endearing. All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to create a texture on here that looks more like earth and dirt. Okay, and the way that we're going to do that is twofold. We're going to use sculpting. Okay, we're going to use some of our sculpting tools to kind of break up the pattern and stuff, and then I'm also going to show you a neat technique that I picked up from a wise old man. Actually, I was just bored one day and I'm like, oh, this will work great. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to randomly, and you guys can follow along, please do actually. So get your base going here, and you can kind of do some of these techniques. I'm going to use the pointy end of my nice little pointy ended tool here, and what I'm going to do is using the edge of it, okay, not the point part, but just the edge of it here, and instead of having it perfectly flat, I'm going to taper it just a little bit off to one side. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw on here in a regular shape where I'm cutting in to the clay. Okay, and I can break it up just a little bit more and then cutting it in, and I'm going to come right into the natural break, that little divot that was right here on the clay. Okay, and I'm just going to kind of widen this out here. So this section here is going to be inset compared to this section here. All right, so now I'm going to turn it over and use the scoop side of it, and I'm actually going to press down and in to the clay there. Okay, and I'm going to turn the piece so I can get to the other side. I'm a lefty, so if you're a righty, you can go the opposite direction. I tend to do everything a little bit backwards as a lefty. Okay, and then here's the next thing I'm going to do. Because I've got a shallow scoop on my tool here, and you can use pretty much anything, whatever tool that you've got lying around. Okay, I'm going to take that and I'm going to do a tappa tappa tappa. Okay, we're going to do a tappa 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 on here as I'm pushing it down, and you can see it's creating a texture here. Okay, and that texture is good news for me. All right, so we're going to kind of texture it in there, And even if I go in here and break up that nice little sharp wall, that is okay by me. All right. So I'm gonna come in here and I'm just gonna break up those edges a little bit by using the tap-a-tap-a-tap motion. And the idea is to stay kind of random. Okay. Nothing wrong with always being a little random. All right. So here we go. So we've created a little bit of texture in that one side where we have a breakup in the ground, as if something's been moved away from the top there. And we have a little bit of breakup. And I'm going to do the same thing over on this other side here. Just randomly, I'm just going to create a little patch over here. But make sure that your patches also go down the sides of your walls here. A lot of people just decorate the top part of their little chunk of clay, their little bases and whatnot. I always bring it down on the sides because it makes it look like it's actually cut out of the ground and kind of brought over to the figure that's going to be standing on top of it. So I'm going to come in here and do the same thing. I'm just going to pull away from the edges so we have some depth on the sides here. Now I already have my oven preheated to 265 degrees. Which means it's floating around 275. I just know my oven that well. If you're going to use a domestic oven, an oven that you're going to cook food in, please don't cook it higher than 275, and always keep an eye on your polymer clay when it's cooking. You don't want to burn it, and the reason that is because when you burn the polymer clay, it has a tendency to exhaust some smoke, as most burnt things do. Well, when your oven cools down, that smoke actually can congeal back into a polymer onto the heating element of your oven, especially if you're using an electric stove, and it will always be there when you turn your oven back on. So I really strongly recommend that if you're going to use a domestic, a food-based one that you're going to continue to cook food in, cook it a little bit low on the temperature so that you're not you're not burning it. You don't run that risk. And then always keep an eye on it. Cook it for the regulated amount of time, which is 15 minutes for every 1/4 inch thickness. Okay. I will, like this piece here, I know it's 1/2 inch thick because that's what these are, 1/2 inch. So I'm going to cook this piece for half an hour at about 265 degrees, which is going to be right around 270 to 75 down to 260, which is fine by me. Now, all right, so we've got our dirt on little bits on there, and now I'm going to use this tool here, okay, my little rake here. If you don't have one of these rakes, go get a fork. We all got forks. I know we all eat, all right? So go get a fork, and you can do the same thing. Just make sure that you're using smaller strokes, okay? And actually, I can even show it to you. I'm going to go one step further. I'm going to use a spork, okay? You just need the tines. Really, all you need is you need something that's going to give you a regular surface. So I'm going to take my spork here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to randomly pick at the area. And here's the cool thing. Okay, so I've got this spork here that I'm using, and I'm going to randomly pick. And what this is going to do is it's going to create a grass texture. Okay, and if you notice, I'm not just going in the same direction all the time. I'm turning the spoon in all different directions. Okay, that's right, beavers. Different strokes for different folks. That is okay. In some parts of Asia, they only use chopsticks, but they have sharpened chopsticks. So you can use. You can always get your hands on something pointy. Use a comb. You know, now you're going to tell me that in some parts of Asia, people don't use combs; they only use brushes. Use a brush. I'm just saying that there's a variety of tools that you can use out there. You don't need to necessarily use the tools that I'm using. Okay. All right. Now I'm going to go back to here. Now here's the cool thing: if you've got a spork, if you got a fork, and you also happen to have a rake, it's going to create two different textures. Okay. So we're going to get a finer grass over here mixed in. Okay. So we're going to get a finer grass mixed in, and again, turn the tools, the randomness of the tools. That is the key here, guys. You want to make sure that your tools, that the texture that you're creating is not patterned. All right, humans have a tendency to lean towards patterns, even subconsciously. We love patterns. That's why when you're looking at a nice wood grain on a door, or you see a bunch of patterns or like pockmarks and stuff in a drop ceiling, you see faces, okay? Because humans have to find patterns. It's just part of who we are, okay? So what we're doing is we're adding a little bit more texture in there, and I like that spork. Toothbrush for texturing, yeah, again, different tools for however you'd like to use them, absolutely. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to add some more of that thicker grass. Okay, and I'm just pulling the clay. Now, if you notice, we're going to get a little bit of loose clay up in here. So what we can do is we can just kind of brush that away. Come back here and here. And this is just going to give us a natural wild texture. Okay, now it's not anything technically high end, you know, but the reason that we're putting this texture into it is because we're going to dry brush it in the end, and all this tiny little texture is going to look like all different kinds of foliage, and that's the point here. Okay, it's going to look more realistic because it's not all uniform. Lefty says it's the same with patterns in music. That's right. You gotta make sure you don't get all your patterns stuck on there. And then we're gonna bring them down the sides. See, now this grass though that's coming down the side, okay, I'm gonna have some areas where it comes down further, okay, but then I can come in with my spoon side here, and I can add some dirt back into it and make that grass look like it's actually growing over the edge of a cliff. Okay, so we get some really nice textures in there. All right, now I'm gonna show you my secret weapon, guys. That's right, I'm gonna show you my secret weapon, and here is my secret weapon, guys. Ignore the brand name there, but this is my secret. It is a martini shaker, but it's not the martini shaker that is the actual secret weapon. It's what's inside. And no, it's not vodka, guys. What it is sea salt. Okay, this is my favorite thing about it. Now you can use sugar, you can use confectioner sugar, works really well because it's really big grains, but I find that sea salt, especially kosher salt or just regular sea salt, is big flakes. Okay, that's what you want to do. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this salt and I'm actually going to drop it right over the dirt areas that we created. Okay, I'm going to take the salt, these big flakes of salt, I'm going to put it right over there, and then I'm going to take my finger and I'll press it in. Okay, and then I'm going to go over it and I'm going to do it again. Okay, I'm going to grab a little bit more. So now, I'm going to press that in, and then we're going to bake it with that salt in there. Okay, now, it's not to make it taste better. No, Dylan. That is not the reason that we're going to do it. The reason that I'm doing it is because once it cures, once that we've cooked the polymer clay, and we bring it out, what I can do is I can run it under water and dissolve out all the salt. Okay, and what that's going to do is it's going to leave a texture in the dirt that I can't replicate. Okay, I can't replicate that texture manually, or I could, but it would take forever. But the tiny little crystals are so irregular that when we push them into the clay and we remove them with the water, they leave the divots of it. It's like a stamp, but it's an irregular stamp that I can't recreate. And then when you go to dry brush over it, it's going to do that. Galame says she does it with sand all the time, but the nice thing about the salt is the salt dissolves, it goes away. I don't have to worry about brushing it out or making sure that it gets encapsulated or anything like that. This is actually going to leave a negative impression, which is what I like. But sand actually does a great thing too. I mean, you can embed a lot of things into your polymer clays. If we wanted to, we could take some marbles, we could take some glass, and we can actually stick it inside here as well, and it would do the trick. Okay, so there we go. So now I have an irregular shaped base, okay, that we're going to use for our guy. I've added a little bit of salt in here, and I'll show you once this comes out of the oven what that's going to look like. Okay, he just made a hamburger patty, didn't he? No, I did not make a hamburger patty. I made a base. All right, so I'm going to go throw this in the oven, so I will be right back. Okay, so we set our timer for 30 minutes for something that's ½ inch thick. Okay, we always want to make sure that it's 15 minutes for every quarter inch of thickness. 30 minutes for ½ inch. Okay, so 15 minutes for every quarter inch of thickness. That's what we're going to work on. So we're going to clean off our workspace here. Now, when you're working with polymer clay, there's a couple different options that you can use when making things that are tall and spindly. Okay. Fail pop quiz. Now, everybody, what did I just use? No. So one of the things that you need to, that's written on the box. Absolutely, it's written on the box. Here we go. It's going to say, baking instructions. Start with clean hands, shaped clay. Pieces thicker than ½ inch may need bulking out if you want to. But bake on oven-proof glass or metal surface at 275 degrees for 15 minutes per quarter inch or 6 millimeters of thickness. Now, I would not recommend putting it on glass or metal because it's going to burn the bottom of it. I really recommend... I would really recommend using a silicone pad. They're available anywhere, okay? So I'd really recommend that. Because when you get metal or glass on there, it's going to heat faster and it's going to hold heat longer than just the ambient air temperature. And so you're going to end up getting hot spots or burnt spots on your clay, okay? What's the Celsius range again? I couldn't hear. 130 degrees Celsius. Okay, so 275 degrees Fahrenheit or 130 degrees Celsius. I always tend to, with my oven, aim a little bit lower. Don't trust the oven thermometer on your oven, I recommend going out there and buying one to put inside your oven, because the thermostat is typically located further away from the heating elements. So put the thermometer where the clay is going to be, and then check it. You know, preheat your oven, let it run for about 20-30 minutes. Yes, your oven can do 200, so you're fine. Absolutely, Brilliance. All right. Note card between the Cryosphinx says, I've used a note card between the clay and the glass before. Opinion. Note card's better than paper because it's not going to wrinkle as bad. It will help with it. Silicone just has a tendency to be a little bit more insulative. So, but that will work the same way. Another option is if you've got an irregularly shaped object, you can actually use polyfill. Okay, and that's that white like fibrous stuff inside of pillows or stuffed animals. You can go to any craft store, same place you would buy your clay or your clay tools, and buy a bag of polyform. You can actually put the polyform in your oven at 275 degrees and it won't melt. And what it does is it creates a cradle that will allow the clay to sit on top of it, and it will not burn, and it doesn't stick to the clay. And so you can actually nestle it onto a bed of it. So if you've got like a head or a hand or something that's got an irregular shape, you can actually go and put that in there. Another thing that I'll do sometimes is I will create stands using old clay. So if I have an arm that needs to stay upright, you know, up in the air like this, I'll create a post out of old clay that goes to the ground that holds it. So I've got a place where it's touching the ground, you know, where my elbow is, and then also another pillar or something there. And then I can take those and break those off and throw those away when I'm done. Okay. Now, all right, so a couple different ways that we can approach building a figure is to use an armature, okay? And I use an armature a lot. I talked about that earlier. What I typically do is I use a wide assortment of brass you know, tubes and rods. Okay, that is my typical go-to. Or if you don't happen to have any of that around, and since y'all working around along with me today, I figured let's show a technique in which you don't need to have the armature inside of it. Even though we're still gonna build this nice little spindly dude. All right, we don't need an armature inside of it because we're going to multi-bake it, which means that the bottom part, which is where we're going to start, is going to be baked the most. All right, and so it's going to have a lot more. It will be completely baked through and rigid. So when we go to add the parts to the top and so on and so forth, it will still maintain its strength, so it won't bend over and fall apart. Okay, and I'm going to show you how to do that. So looking at our cool little dude here, he's got twisted. This is a little like wood fairy, wood nymph type of not so much. He's just a woodland critter that is of the fantasy persuasion. You can make whatever you want, but what we're going to do is we're going to do twisted vines for the feet. Okay, and it's just because it's going to look neat. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my clay, and this is we can use Super Sculpey. I like Super Sculpey, but I might actually even try the Super Sculpey medium on this one, just so that we can kind of see, or blend the two together. I mean, maybe I'll do a little bit of both. But it's not gonna, you can do this with Super Sculpey, okay? You don't need to use a firmer clay to do this. You can actually use just regular Super Sculpey. I just thought, yeah, since I've got it, let's kind of show the difference. And you can see it's still very flexible. Again, straight from Sculpey.com, this clay is the bomb. I mean, it is exactly where you want it to be to work the clay, okay? And you can see, I mean, even as a medium texture clay, medium density clay, it's still nice to work with. It's still very, very, very nice and soft to work with. Same thing with, but I can definitely tell the difference when I'm squeezing these two clays, that the regular Sculpey is softer. Okay, it is might I say gooier, but not gooey. I mean, it's just, you can definitely tell that there is a difference when I'm squeezing these two different clays together. So I'm going to use the medium here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to break off a piece. Our guy's going to be about 3.5, 4 inches tall. Okay, I'm going to bring the camera back just a little bit further so we can kind of see. So he's going to be about yay big, okay? So if you have a drawing that you want to work off of, you can actually use this as a template to kind of give you an idea of like how long you want the legs to be. All right. If you don't have a template, if you don't have a drawing in front of you, you can make it up. Again, this is a fantasy creature, so there's no wrong in the fantasy creature. All right. So what I'm going to do is we're going to make snakes. Snakes on a plane. There's no planes, but we're going to make snakes, which is like 101 with sculpting. It's rolling it out. Now, I do want to talk about something when we're mixing and blending clay, even if it's regular, just one type of clay when we're working it. Here's something I want to talk about that is going to affect your sculpting when you're done baking it. If I take a piece of clay here and I fold it over to work it in my hands, okay, or I grab one of these pieces here and I fold it over multiple times to give myself a ball, I can take this clay here, okay, and then I can actually, and we're just going to roll it into a ball really quickly here. Thank you, beavers. 2 beavers and a dam for the host. Okay, now look at this. Look how smooth that is on the outside. Okay, we've just rolled it into a ball. Okay, here's the thing though, we didn't fill the inside's not solid. The inside actually has holes. Okay. See those holes in there? See that unblended clay? Okay, now look, we've got like we've got actually caverns in there. Okay, and we've also got parts where the clay is not blended together at all. All right, that's not good. Okay, you need to make sure. The reason that's not good is because while the surface has a nice smooth texture to it, what can happen is when it's cooking, those fissures are full of air, right? Well, as it's sealing itself, it's hardening up. That air is going to expand because hot air expands. That's why hot air balloons float. It's lighter. It's going to expand slightly, and you can get fissures in your finished baked product. Okay, so you want to make sure that whenever you're blending your clay, you know, if you're folding it over and blending it, that you really, really, really work the clay with your hands to make sure that you get all the air and stuff out of the center, okay? So that when you do pull it apart, it is solid all the way through. It's going to make a huge difference. And it's the same thing if you're using an armature. If you're using an armature and you are working the clay around the armature and it starts to well a hole inside, while the outside may be smooth, you've still got that channel on the inside which is hot, and it's going to fill with hot air, and it can cause your pieces to break. Okay, so you want to make sure that you don't do that. Okay, so here we go. So I've made sure that this clay is a solid. All right, and then we're going to make some snakes out of it. We're just going to press down and just kind of smooth it out. Now, I don't recommend using your fingers for this, because what you're going to do is you're going to make the Elder Wand from Harry Potter, okay? Because you've got all the ridges in your fingers there. We don't want to do that. What we want to do is we want to use the palm of your hand, like the center of the palm, or the pads of your fingers there, and that's going to actually give you a better snake. Better snake. Snakes. All right. And then you're just going to run up and down the length of the snake to give it some uniformity there. Okay, and then if you find like a part that's not perfect, and the secret to polymer clay, especially sculpting, I've heard a lot of people say that, you know, it's too soft, it's too hard to work, it's too soft, and my natural response is usually, you're too hard, you're too firm with your hands, you know? You don't need to abuse the clay. I mean, you be nice to it, it'd be nice to you. You know, you can make some really awesome things with this clay. You just don't have to have a really heavy hand, okay? If you find yourself to have a heavier grip, a heavier hand with it, use a firmer clay, okay, and go out and buy the Super Sculpey Firm. But you don't necessarily have to be so hard with the clay. You can be gentler with the clay. Now what I'm going to do is we want a twisted vine base on this guy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stretch this out just a little bit more. There we go. And I'm going to fold it on itself in threes. Okay, so we're going to get it like this. I'm not going to push it together. I'm not squishing it yet. Okay, so I've got my threes there, and then I'm going to take a knife. This is a clay knife. It is not sharp on either side. It is tapered, but it's not sharp. Okay, it's a clay knife. I've had that for years. I can also use my handy dandy tool here, or I can use my number 11 craft knife, and we're just going to cut one into that. Okay, so we got 3 little blank ends here, and these are going to be his toes. Toes. All right. He needs to have a 4th toe. I mean, 3 toes is good and all, but we need a 4th toe. So I'm going to roll out a small little snake there. Your guy can have 3 toes. You know, again, there's no wrong when you're working with fantasy. That's a cool thing. But I want a 4th toe, so I'm going to throw a 4th toe up on top there. Okay, so I've got 4 little vine pieces here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to twist them. Okay, like that. You don't got to be super abusive to it. You just want to twist it. Okay, so we get ourselves a nice little form. And then I know I've got toes here, so I want my 3 toes to come out on the front here. And then I want that 4th toe to be a back toe. Okay, so I'm going to put my 3 toes up front, like that. Okay, and I've got my back toe there. Okay, and these are going to be, this is going to be my first foot. Okay, and it is a softer clay. Okay, it's going to want to fall over a little bit. That's okay. That's okay. We're going to work with that. We're going to make it work for ourselves here. Okay, now the other thing I want to do is I want to add some little toenails on it because, you know, my fantasy creature, I'm going to add my own toenails to it. So what we're going to do is, looking at the toes here, I'm going to take the scoop side of my scoop tool here. The Sculpey side is USA only. Oh no. I will talk to them, see if I can figure out a way to get you guys a international one as well. We'll see. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just pressing it in to the foot here. Thank you for bringing that to my attention there, Rillians. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the back here. Now, most people would say, okay, they're done. Nah. What we want to do now is we want to take the blade side of it, and we're going to come to the very front, and we're going to press right at the back, right at the front there. Okay, so we get that little cut where the nail actually is. Do that on the same back here. Now, if we want to, and why not? Okay, we know that these are toes. They're frippity floppity, but we're going to come in here to the bottom part. I'm actually going to put in little joints here using my blade. Okay, we know that you're going to have 2 joints in there. It's technically a vine, it wouldn't necessarily have joints, but we're going to put them in here anyways. Okay, so that we know we've got some movement on our toes here. Oh, they don't sell outside the US, only through distributors. I'm sorry. Well, let me see if I can get you guys a discount code for those who are outside the US. We'll see. Again, this is the first time that we've done one of these streams, and so we'll get you guys taken care of. Okay, so now we've got our toes there. All right. All right, we've got that. Now I'm gonna give myself a little knee here. Okay, I'm gonna press together some of the clay. I'm gonna give myself a little bit of a knee, and what I'm also gonna do is I'm going to take, and we're gonna build up. Actually, the second leg is gonna help us keep this whole thing situated here. Okay, so I'm gonna give myself a little knee here, and we're gonna get back to that one. We're gonna build the other one. We're gonna build the other leg really quickly. Okay, I'm gonna bring this up again so we can see what's going on here. So let's do the same thing, second verse, same as the first. This one I'll actually make out regular Sculpey so you can see that there really is no difference in 2 materials. Then what I can do is I can take this one here and we can join them at the hip. Okay, we're just gonna press the 2 together. We're gonna do a little bit of blend here. Okay. And I'm actually going to turn this foot out just a hair. There we go. And I'm going to make sure that we add our toenails back into this one as well. Okay. Fingerprinting is a concern with a lot of clays, just any clay in particular. And the way to work around that is to make sure that you smooth your pieces before you bake them or after you bake them. I mean, you can do it either or. It's just a lot more work after it's baked. There's lots of different ways that you can smooth a product, smooth the clay, especially polymer clay. Some people use water. Believe it or not, I use spit. I find that it is just a little bit more acidic and helps to smooth things out as well. Yeah, if I do this, I warp the legs so much. Again, working with a softer touch, and it's okay. He can be a little bit bow-legged because he's from a bow of a tree. So it's okay. If you want to, you can actually, if you've got some toothpicks or whatnot, you can actually put those inside your piece there, and it will make it rigid. Or if you've got some wire lying around, old coat hangers, or even happen to have some brass lying around, you can insert a brass wire into the center there, and it'll help keep it there. All right. Now what I'm going to do is we have the knee on that one guy there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a tiny little snake. Tiny, tiny little snake here. Okay. And I'm going to roll it up like a cinnamon bun. Okay. So we're going to take it there, and we're going to roll it up like a cinnamon bun. It doesn't have to be perfect, like a cinnamon bun, okay? What we're going to do is we're going to put that right onto his kneecap there, on that other side, okay? And that's going to give us a nice little knot in the tree. A little knotty tree. Okay, and I'm going to blend it in just a little bit using the knife edge of the sculpting tool. Right underneath. There we go. So now we got a nice little knot in that one. And this guy, he's not going to have one on this side. All right, we're just going to do it just like that. All right. Now, but one thing I want to do is I want to add some tree texture to it because, you know, he may be a vine, he may be made of vines and such. So we don't want him to be too smooth, otherwise he looks like he's made of snakes. And that's a different fairy. So the way that we're going to do that is we're going to use our rake tool. Now here's the thing, like I'm holding the piece here. I'm not holding it with any kind of rigid, I'm just laying it in my hand, okay? Again, be soft with your hands. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna take my raking tool here, and I'm gonna follow the grain, follow the path of the twist, okay? But I'm not gonna pull just an absolute straight line. I'm kind of being a little bit wavy with it to create a wood grain texture on there. And then when I get up to this knot here, I just want to kind of make sure I follow the curve of the knot. Okay. We can also go in here, and if we wanted to, and actually add some broken texture to it. Okay. But I find that this is a really quick and easy way to do some wood grain texture. And in the sculpting part of it, like right now, it doesn't look like much. When we get into painting, though, that's where it's going to really start to shine. That's why this texture is necessary in the sculpting phase of it. If you put all the work into the sculpting part of it, the painting actually becomes really, really easy. I know there's a fair number of you out there who are like, I love the sculpting part, but I hate the painting part. Okay, I hate the painting part. And that's so that way I do this, and it's like a lot like paint by numbers when you're done. Okay, Rillians is having an issue right now, which a lot of beginner sculptors have, okay? And he says the moment that I work in the front, I press the clay into my fingers in the back. Again, gentler touch, okay? And if you're finding that that is the only way to get the clay to do what you want it to do, your clay's not worked enough with your hands. It's not soft enough, okay? Like cold Sculpey is going to be a lot harder to work with, okay? So what I do is I work it in my hands a lot, so I get it to a point where it's actually fairly warm, and then that's going to allow you to do gentler pressure on the top of it without pressing too far, you know, pressing into it from the other side. So yes, that can be a concern, and it does take some practice. You know, practice makes perfect, but you're not going to do, there's no wrong here, okay? I just want to stress that to you guys, that when you're creating, even if you're doing a follow along like this, there's no, look at me bumping the camera again. There's no wrong way to do it, guys. It's really just a matter of, you know, opinion. And if this is the first time you've ever sculpted, it's perfectly fine. You know, it's going to be the piece that you start with, and you'll always look back at it and be like, I came a long way. You know, I've made significant improvements in my sculpting, and it does take time. But as you can see, I'm holding it with two fingers here, okay, and you can see I'm gripping it with my thumb right here, okay. But if I take my thumb away, there's no fingerprint, okay. I have fingerprints. I mean, they're hard to see, but I do have them. But I'm just holding it here, and it's such a gentle touch, guys. It's like holding a kitten, okay. You don't want to grip a kitten, all right. You want to hold the kitten gently, and that's the same thing with this clay, all right. Be gentle, and you know, it'll do what it needs to do. It does take some practice to get to this point, though. I will. Suwani is not wrong in that regard. Okay, so we're just coming in here and we're just adding some more texture, just doing the vine work here. And you notice I'm moving the clay all over the place. You know, big deal. I can go and reset it. It's not cured yet, so you know I have the ability to move it all over there, and then I'll get it back to where I want it. And then once we bake it and get it nice and firmed up, then it's going to be perfect. Okay, a lot of times, Elbert says, a lot of times the mistakes lead you to better results you would not think of. Absolutely. Absolutely. So here we are. And you may find that in a lot of the like I found with a lot of my techniques, is that the techniques that I've figured out, okay, have been, oh wow, that worked. So here we go. So we've got our guy, his legs, okay, and I'm gonna kind of give him a little bit of a bow to his leg there. He's got his 4 toes on each foot here, and a little bit more texture on this one. Okay, I'm gonna put this one out so make it look like he's a little sassy. Okay, because you know, why not? Make this one stand up just a little bit more. All right, so now we've got that part of our body there. Okay, and I would say at this point, you know, we can add a little bit more texture, but I'm going to go ahead and cook him. All right, now there's a couple different ways that we can cook him. We can cook it just like this, and mine's coming out awesome. Well, wonderful, Albert. Okay, so one of the ways that we can cook it just like this, okay, but it might fall over when we're cooking it. You know, you never know. All right, so one thing that we're going to do is we're going to sacrifice a little bit of clay here, okay, and I'm going to use my good clay because, you know, that's the part of it, okay. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a third leg here. If you wanted to, like a plastic bag and pickle fork for skin texture, says Monty. That's an interesting way to do it. But we're going to make a third leg here, and it's just going to be a stand. If you wanted to, you could do a tail, okay? But I find that the tail's not going to be rigid enough. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a stand, another leg, a third leg, and this is just going to be a sacrificial piece, okay? And what we're going to do is 3 legs are going to be, 3 posts are going to stand up a lot stronger than 2 posts. That's right. So 3 legs is better than 2. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to create a third post here. We're going to turn our guy to the side so I can show you what we're going to do here. Okay, so I get my pose the way that I want it. And I'm going to take this third post here, and I'm actually going to arc it in, and I'm just going to gently press it in. Don't work it into the piece. You just want to take it and gently press it against where you want it to sit, okay? Just like that. So now when this cures in the oven, okay, it's going to lock that in. Since we're not blending this piece into the rest of the parts, when this cures, this is just going to break right off, okay? And it'll break where we attach it, so it's not technically part of the sculpture, okay? And that is what we want. I would put it in the back. Dylan asked, do I put the third one in the front or the back? I would do it in the back because you're going to have a lot more stability there. If you wanted to do 4, you could even do 4. You know, you could do a 4th one in the front so that it's got even more. But since we've got such a wide base with the 3 toes on the front here, the back is going to be probably the better place to support it. Now, when you're looking at it from the side, make sure that your guy is standing fairly straight up and down. That's going to make all the difference. Okay. Relian says it's support like 3D printing. Absolutely, you know. And since we're going to put this into an oven, and this clay is going to get soft for briefly because it's going to get warmer before it starts to harden back up, we want to make sure that we've got some support in here. And that's why, you know, so we don't need the armature per se. Okay, we are just basically building our own out of it, the structure, and then once this comes out of the oven, we're going to keep building up on top of it, and that's going to make all the difference. Now we've got 3 minutes left on the timer here, and this is for our base. Okay, so what we can do is I'm just going to go and put this into the oven. Now I know with the base, what makes it harden up is the evaporative nature of the polymer. The polymer is going to get cooked out of it, and it's going to leave just the clay itself. Okay, I do strongly recommend that you wear gloves when you're taking things out of the ovens. I've been doing this for so long, though, that my hands don't feel anything. So, this is 275 degrees right now. Okay, I just happen to have hands that are used to being warm. Okay, so we're gonna set that there. All right. Okay. So what I recommend doing now is once this has started to cool down, okay. What we're going to do is we're going to take some water, and normally I would do this inside of a sink, but since I'm trying to do this inside of a stream here, I'm going to actually take this bucket of water here, and we're going to rinse off the salt that's on there, okay? There we go. I'm just going to dry it off real quick. Okay, so now we can see we've got the texture in there. Okay, we've got the texture of that salt pressed in. Oh, there's the timer. Okay, so we've got the texture of the salt pressed into the clay on the edges and such. You can see there's a little bit of salt left in here. Okay, so I can go ahead and do that again. But then that's going to give us a really nice dry brush texture to it when we're ready to paint. Now you can really see that texture in there. Okay, so we have the texture on the clay in all the different areas. Now all of this is going to allow us to dry brush this texture really nice. Hello, Dragon. Thank you. Dragon Custom PCs. All right, so now we've got the legs cooking. We're going to cook those for 15 minutes, and the reason that is because all of the little tiny vines that are in there are 1/4 of an inch thick. Okay, so we don't need to cook it because it's not a solid. Okay, it's going to cook evenly throughout each of the pieces, and so we're going to cook it for 15 minutes. Plus, we're going to multi-bake. Okay, which means we're going to bake it more than once we start adding more and more clay to it. All right, so the next thing that we want to do though is we're going to create the staff. Okay, and I said that this is why we want to work in pieces and parts, is so that we can have a piece that's in the oven actually doing what it needs to do, you know, cook and get hard. So we're going to work on some other pieces as well. So we got a nice little staff here. So what we're going to do is we're going to do another technique where we create a nice little wood texture. Okay, and how we're going to do that is another fun little thing that I learned how to do a long time ago. All right, so we're going to create a sketch, and this is going to be a stick. He just basically found a stick, so it doesn't need to be perfect. Okay, we just want a stick of some sort for him to be him, her, however you want to, non-gender specific, you know. The fairy. So we're just going to create a staff of some sort. Okay, and I want it to have a somewhat flared end on the bottom. Okay, and that's just to allow it to sit firmly on the ground. If we want to, we can say, all right, it's going to go like right here on the base, and just kind of press it into the base so that it has, you know, a permanent place to sit. All right, and I'm just going to stretch this out so I get it to be about staff thickness. Okay, and we're going to say I'm going to break it off about there. Maybe thin it out just a hair bit more. Okay, so we have that staff that we're building. There you go. For those of you who have followed my stream before, you are quite familiar with what these vines were for. This is for a different project that I use. But if you go outside, there's sticks aplenty. You could even use a stick. Okay, but you don't necessarily have to. Okay, and we can actually, and if we wanted to, we could actually incorporate some of these sticks. So I might do that one, just to make it kind of cool looking. So we have these like tiny little twig things here. We're gonna, since I'm gonna use these inside here, I'm gonna thin this out just a little bit more so we have a little bit more polymer clay here. So we're gonna thin this out just a little bit more, and then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use these, but you can use this as texture as well. Okay, so if you wanted to get the idea of like branches in there, you can actually press this into your clay and pull it back out, and it's gonna give you a texture. If you've got wood bark lying around outside, you got an old tree stump or whatnot, take a block of wood and actually roll the clay over it, okay, and then pull it back off, and you're gonna get that texture of that branch, of that log or whatever, that bark that's on there, and you're gonna get that to show up inside the wood. Okay, anything that you've got lying around that can give you a decent texture, you know, you can use it as a stamp. You know, I've got this 3D printed part here, and I can do the same thing. I can roll this over this, and it's going to give me lines on the clay. Okay, it just really depends on what you got lying around. I want to use something that's a little bit more organic, so I'm going to go with these sticks here. Okay, I want to we're going to break off this little bit right there, and I'm going to take this. I'm going to wrap it just a little bit around this branch here. Okay, so we're going to get a little bit of a funky branch staff going on here. Okay, we're going to wrap it around there a little bit, and then I'm actually going to use more than one of these little branches because I want to make sure that it sticks. Now, when you're running into, here's the trick that I use a lot. Okay, so I'm running into this problem where the clay doesn't really want to stick to it. Okay, you can see it's all floppy. It's going to fall off of here. Okay, it's not doing what I want it to do. All right, you can go to the store, and they actually sell. There's a person who sells Sculpey glue that holds polymer clay glue to polymer to other thing else. Nimbus, hello. Nimbus says, "Hi, pal. How are you today? I'm doing well." What I'm going to use something called super glue. Okay, and super glue is actually a wonderful product to use to make things to make raw Sculpey or raw polymer clay stick to other objects or to itself. If you want to take polymer clay and stick it to cured polymer clay, you can use a little bit of super glue to hold it in place. You can also use things like Vaseline. That seems to work really well too. I prefer the super glue because it's an instant bond. Okay, so we can go in here, and as soon as it touches that super glue, it has stuck. Okay, so that is what I want it to do here. So we're going to add a little bit more right here. And as you can see, I use a lot of super glue. I buy it in these 2-ounce bottles. But you know, any super glue will work. I just happen to use a lot of it, so I buy it in bulk. All right, so there we go. So we've got the staff attached to the twig. I'm going to break it off the top there, kind of blend it back out, and then I'm going to attach 1 or 2 more of these guys here. So we got a little branch here. Okay. He's a woodland guy, so guy girl thing. He's a woodland thing. So I'm going to add more than 1 branch to this staff to kind of give him a cool, like he's brought it from home. Gentle little brought it from home. Oh, really add to my try list, says Galame. Something new to try. Excellent. Like Vaseline's a brand name, but petroleum jelly, you know, that works too to get it. The thing that I find with petroleum jelly though is that it doesn't harden while you are trying to attach it. It will stick. It'll get the pieces to stick, but it can also have a tendency to want to slide around. I find that super glue instantly attaches, so I don't have to worry about it anymore. Thing is, you want to use just enough that it doesn't spill out everywhere, because it will instant cure, and you want to just make sure that it doesn't stick to everything and you know, push its way out, so you've got extra glue everywhere. So a little bit goes a long way. I'm just going to add a little bit there, a little bit there. Okay. I'm going to come back to my groovy little stick, and we're going to cross. Don't cross the streams. No, we're definitely going to cross the streams here. Okay. There we go. All right. I think that's a funky looking staff there. I like that. Okay. We're going to make it a little bit more magical in a little bit here, but I want to get the base of it going here. All right, got a nice texture there. Again, you don't have to do that. You can just use a regular piece of clay. You don't have to do the sticks on there as well. I just kind of like the idea of it, the look of it. Okay. Kilroy says that Harbor Freight has 10 tubes of CA glue, which is cyanoacrylate glue, yeah, that's what it is. Super glue is what it is, for $2. Really good deal. All right. Yes, so that's a good way to get it as well. You can usually find some in bulk at another box store as well. So just get it to there. Now, I really like the look of this. So I'm going to set that there. I might come in here and add a little bit more texture. I can see, because just from pressing it into the sticks over and over again, I've got a pretty decent texture in here. So I'm just going to go and amplify it just a little bit by taking my rake here and raking some more texture into it. Okay. If I wanted to, I wouldn't even have to use a clay for the staff. I could just use sticks, you know, if I really wanted to. Hey, Zoom. Zoom's here. Good morning, Zoom. All right, so there we go. So we've got our pieces there. Eventually, I'll probably end up trimming this back, but I want to leave it on there for now while it cures. Okay, and I know it's going to sit on the base, probably right around here. It's just going to give this guy something to hold on to. Now, before we go and cook this, what we're going to do is we're going to open up this bacon bend clay here. And you can do this with just regular Sculpey. It will be fine too. Or the other thing that I use is this other product, which I have come to love, especially when making pieces like cake toppers or sculptures in which there's tiny arms and hands. And this material, also by Sculpey, called Ultralight. Okay, and the difference between Ultralight and Super Sculpey, if Super Sculpey is considered soft, this is a pillow. Okay, this is super soft and light polymer clay. Okay, it still bakes in the oven the exact same temperature, 275 degrees for every 1/4 inch of thickness. Thing is, this stuff floats in water. Okay, this is actually really interesting clay. Now, I'm going to open it up. This is fresh. It's about as fresh as you can get it here, and it is ghost white. Okay, and we're going to pull off a little bit of it here. Now, the biggest difference between Ultralight and the other clays is that, one, it is substantially lighter. Okay, if we do the pull test, you see how it creates these nice little, or not really nice, but these granules in the clay there, okay? If we go and we pull it again, and you're gonna see that we're gonna get these granules. There's a good example of it right there, all right? That's pretty much the difference between ultralight and Super Sculpey. The problem is that this material, because it is so light and so soft, okay, it's hard to get any kind of really good detail into it. But when it cures, it's actually somewhat flexible. It's not as flexible as the bake and bend, okay, but it is flexible. And so what I do is I have a tendency to take half and half, like a 50-50 ratio of Super Sculpey and ultralight. That's more like 70-40, Paul. All right. It looks, and it actually has, marshmallows are more dense than this clay is, Relians. Relian says it looks like a marshmallow. Lefty says that is a super fine compound. Oh, it is. It's super fine. And you can see it just comes off in your hands. It is a very soft, very mushy type of clay. But I blend it with the Super Sculpey. And what this allows me to do is it allows me to get the rigidity of Super Sculpey. Okay. But at the same time, it allows me to, once it's cured, it has a little bit of flexibility to it. Good morning, Emily. So if I'm building an arm, okay, let's say I've got a small arm here. Let's get the wrist in there. That's a really funny looking arm, Paul. All right, so we've got an arm like this, and I've got an armature inside of here, okay? Let's just say I've got an armature running up the arm and such. And say it's on a figure, and the figure is, you know, pointing out into the sun. So we're gonna make his hands point. There it is. He's pointing off into the sunset, just like that, all right? The problem is if somebody's looking at it and they bump this, and it's just regular Super Sculpey, it may break. Okay, it may break. The nice thing about mixing it with the ultralight and the Super Sculpey is if somebody bumps it, it'll bend. Okay, I make a lot of cake toppers, and I've had a lot of bakers drop the cake toppers, and typically, you know, they've got really skinny arms because they're cake toppers. They're tiny little figures, and before it would always break the hands off because I was just using Super Sculpey. Mixing with the ultralight allows it to have that little bit of flexibility. So that in case it does get bumped, dropped, it won't shatter, okay? It still stays somewhat resilient, okay? Now the bake and bend clay is not just like bump and it's okay. You can actually take this material and bend it once it's fully cured, okay? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna actually make some leaves out of this. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna show you. The reason I want to do this with the leaves is I want to show you. I want to show you a neat technique for creating leaves and stuff. Yeah, see the bake and bend clay that you can buy here, bake and bend. It actually shows you being able to basically take a skinny little guy like that and cross his arms like that after you've baked it, and it pops back open, okay? And it does, it cooks it at the exact same temperature and everything as regular polymer clay. The only thing I don't like about the bake and bend clay is that it doesn't come in a neutral. I mean, it comes in black and white, and you can blend the colors together. But this is the problem that I find with the green, with the colored clays, is that it has a tendency to leach off into your fingers when you're working with it. And then if you go and touch something that is a neutral color or whatnot, that color tends to move with it. And so what you have to do is you have to wash your hands between using each of these pieces. And what I use to do that is I use what's called orange cleaner with pumice, okay? And that pumice takes this material right off your hands, which is really nice. The orange cleaner is actually safe for your skin and stuff to use over and over again. Wrong box there, Paul. So I'm looking for another tool that I have here. These are some other tools that I have, and these are your sculpting tools, you know, and these are, I believe, are actually a brand name of sculpting tools. But the reason that I wanted them is I wanted this ball bearing on the end of each of them. All right, and so what we're going to do is we're going to take our stick. We're going to move the stick over there for a second, and we're going to break off a tiny little ball of this clay here. And you can do this, and I'll do this with this bake and bend clay. I'll do it with the Super Sculpey too, just so that we can kind of see the difference. I'll even do some out of the mix that I have, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to take that little ball of clay and we're going to put it in our hand, okay? Now, you can use water to do this. I'm going to lick the tool, okay, because I want a little bit of spit on here. And the reason I want that is I want it to have some little bit of lubricant on here. So we're working the clay out in a circle and we're feathering out the edges there, okay? And then we can pull the piece up, Okay, so we're gonna pinch one end of it, and you can see this is a soft clay too, because it's very warm. Okay, so we're gonna pinch one end to get ourselves more of a leaf look. Set it back down on our palm, and we're going to, don't eat the clay, guys. I'm just putting a little bit of saliva on there, just so that it has a little bit more of a lubricant on it. Okay, otherwise it's gonna stick really bad. Okay, and then we can take our knife tool here, and we can actually draw a line down the center, and we can get ourselves some veining. Now they make stamps for this, or you can go out and get an actual leaf and create some stamps for it and whatnot. And we're gonna peel this off. And that one fell apart. Let's try this again. I may be too warm to do this. And if that's the case, that's fine. We can move to a piece of paper, and we can do it here as well. And if we want, we can start again. This time we'll add the point in there right off the bat. Set that down on there. Gotta be flexible when you're working with your materials here, guys, because you never know. You know, if it's too hot, it's a nice hot summer day today, so it's going to be warm. My hands are going to be warm, and we're just going to take this tool here, and I'm just going to work out the thinness of the piece. Again, add our vein. Boop. Okay, there we go. Now again, I'm going to use, I never do this technique. My hands are way too hot. Yeah, that's true, Galliman. I mean, it just really depends on how you are. Okay, but again, I take that paper off the sharp edge of the table there, and it comes right off. Okay, I'm going to add this leaf to the top here. Do a little bit of a blend there. All right, set this one down. Now let's do one out of Super Sculpey. And you can see, because I've got the green on my hands, that we're turning the Super Sculpey green. Sarah says, well, if I can't eat the clay, what am I supposed to do for dinner? Don't make your pieces so appetizing. Same thing before. Okay, so we're going to take the piece here. We're going to create a nice little leaf out of it. There we go. Taking our knife tool here, we're going to do another vein. We're going to run a vein down the center and just give ourselves a little couple branches in here as well. I'm going to offset your branches. I mean, if you go look at nature. If you don't know what a leaf looks like, go outside, find one. That's probably the easiest way to do it. All right, and we're going to again take it over the edge here so that it pops right off the piece of paper. I said so it pops right off the piece of paper. It's not listening to me today. All right, and then we're going to add this leaf to the top as well. Like so. And then we're going to do one more out of a different material. So we're going to use 3 different materials here. Hey, Adam, how are you today? All right, so we're going to do the same thing 3rd time here. And this is a blend of the Super Sculpey and the Ultralight. Okay. Adam says, what's a leaf? And it reminds me of when I read stories to my kids. There's always that one guy who's always, what's a leaf? And does that. I always do that funny voice. My kids always think it's hilarious. And then they'll repeat it to me a lot. What's a leaf? So their favorite book is Where's My Hat? And that is that's what the armadillo says. The armadillo says, what's a hat? And that's the voice I use. Okay, so we're going to do another vein through the center. 3 up one side, 3 up the other side. There we go. And again, we're going to take the piece of paper, we're going to drag it over the edge. There we go. So it pops off really nicely there. And we're going to add this 3rd leaf to the top. Okay. So now we got our 3 leaves. I want to blend these together just a little bit at the top. I'm going to use one of my needle tools here. That thing you put in there. There you go. So now I've got those 3 leaves there. Okay, and we're going to bend them so they look a little bit more natural. There we are. Okay, so now we have our nice staff there. Okay, so we got the 3 leaves at the top. We got our staff there. I'm going to trim it up a little bit once it's done cooking. The alarm for the legs is done, so I'm going to go grab the legs. So I will be right back. All right. So this piece came out of the oven. It's nice and dry. This piece came off right quick. Okay. So this piece was lying back here like this. Okay. Boom. And so it just came right off. And there we have our legs standing up on their own. All right. Now, My guy has a tendency to lean towards the back. I have a tendency to do that with all of my figures. I have a tendency to make my figures, they always seem to be leaning backwards for some reason. I don't know why that is. I think it's just a bad habit of mine when I'm sculpting. Or it's because I like to have their heads lean forward a little bit more to kind of give them a more of an animated look to them. I don't want anybody to be standing completely rigid straight up and down. So there we go. I also washed my hands using that pumice that I talked about so that I don't no longer green fingered. No more green fingers. All right, so we're going to put this back over here. So we have this piece here. It's going to take a little bit of time to cool down. Okay, so but we have our figure on the base here. I'm going to move him more towards the back because we know the staff's got to be in there as well. Now, this piece here was that third part there that kind of held everything together. We can take that and just throw it away. It's not useful. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to glue this guy straight to the base here so that we have a nice rigid structure to attach everything to. Okay. So what I'm going to do is take a little bit of the super glue. Okay. Again, I love my super glue. All right. We're just going to add a little bit to each of the toes. Okay, and then we're going to settle our guy onto our base here. Now the nice thing about the super glue is since this is a ceramic based material, the polymer is much like a ceramic based material, super glue works really well to hold everything together. Okay, so right now it's got a little bit of flexibility because it's warm still. As it cools down, it's going to make itself more and more rigid. Okay, so there we go. And then once it's completely hardened, what we're going to do is start adding the torso to it. So this is where the multi-bake process comes in handy. The more that we bake this, the more rigid it's going to get. Same thing with the base down here. So as we're adding to it, this already has some rigidity to it. Okay, and so when we add some softer clay to it, while it's cool, this is warming up, it's going to get a little bit softer, but this is already rigid, and so even though it's warming up, it's going to have a little bit more flexibility to it. It's going to get to about this state, but the more times we cook it, the more rigid it's going to get, and eventually it's not going to have that rigidity at all, which is really, really nice. Okay, so while we're waiting for that to cool down just a little bit, we're going to get this other clay kind of worked into a warmer state here. It should take only a few minutes. I mean, you can let this completely cool to room temperature. That's really up to you. I have a tendency to work a little bit faster, so I don't mind it being a little bit warm to the touch. You just have to know that while it's still warm, it's going to be more fragile because it's got that flexibility to it. So you don't want to be really rigid with it. If you wait until it completely cools down, then it's going to be a lot harder and it's going to be a lot easier to handle. Okay, but I have a gentler hand. Okay, so you guys can wait on this part here while you're working along while this piece cools down, or you can work along with me. That's fine. All right, so looking back at our guy here, we're going to give him just a normal-ish kind of, it'll be wood textured, but like a human-ish torso here. So basically it's going to be, if we take our pencil out, okay, we're going to give ourselves essentially a trapezoid. Okay, like that. And then we're going to give a small trapezoid on the bottom. So if that's our trapezoid on the bottom, this is going to be our trapezoid on the underneath. This is going to be that's his waist, okay, and that's basically his pelvis bone. And then if we do another small trapezoid underneath, okay, that gives us our entire structure there, okay. And then the next thing we do is one more small trapezoid at the top, okay, and that's going to give us our entire torso area. All right, so that's what we're going to do. We're going to add this in here. Now we already have the legs kind of coming up into here to create this weird, bridge in the center here. So we know that we're going to have to build this trapezoid or octagon, basically, around the parts that come in here. But that's okay. That's how we're going to attach those pieces together. And then we're going to build the torso up on top of it. Okay, so that's what we're going to do here. So we can start while this is cooling off a little bit, just by adding that torso area to it. Now, if we look on our guy here, I put some like leaves and stuff around that base, and then some more twigs and stuff. We can throw a loincloth on them or whatnot if we would like to. The way that you'd start with that is you create a triangle, kind of like a shark's tooth. All right, would be a good example. If you've never seen a shark's tooth before, think of it like a large canine. okay? And that's going to go right towards the front here, okay? All right, and then we're going to take another piece of clay, a slightly larger piece of clay here, and we're going to create a pretty much like a wide trapezoid like that. Okay, it's going to have some thickness, about 1/4 of an inch, 1/8 of an inch of thickness there. Okay, and then we're going to lay that across the back. All right, so that's going to give us the gluteus muscle. Okay, and if you notice, we're curling it around there. All right, and it's also going to give us a little bit of hip bone in there. Okay, if you like other people, you can do this. Do you bake this multiple times as you add things, Doodle? Yes, I do, and you'll see that we're going to do that next. What we're going to do is we're going to add the pelvis and a stem for the torso, not the whole torso, just the stem. We could do the whole torso if we wanted to, but you don't want that weight to want to cause it to pitch forward or backwards and break. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to do it in stages. All right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take my thumb, the paint brushes I take with me everywhere, the blending brushes, and we're going to blend in the edges of this piece. That's a great question, Doodle. Yes, that's part of the multi-baking process, is we're going to keep baking this piece over and over again to make sure that it is fully baked, and that the pieces will actually stay fairly rigid once it's done. Okay, and we're just basically blending these pieces together. You can come in here with your tools as well. This is where I grab my handy dandy aluminum tools, because the clay is still warm, so I want to make sure that my hands, sorry for the bumping the camera there, just trying to move some sticks out of the way here. My hands are warm, the clay is warm, so I want to make sure that the pieces blend together. Now, what you don't want to do is take your clay tool and drag it, because as you drag it, you see that bit right there where it starts to crumb. Okay, so I'm going to take the clay here. When you're dragging, you don't want to drag straight down, because you're going to take that clay and you're going to create these crumbs or these rigid edges. So what I'm recommending is that if you're going to blend two pieces together, is you take the tool, push your thumb up on it, and then as you're dragging it down, pull your thumb down as well. And so the tool is actually rotating as you're blending there. Okay, so it's a rotational blend. So that's what we're going to do here. We're going to take the tool and we're going to blend the pieces down by rotating the tool into it, instead of just pulling the material down. We're still moving the material, we're just doing it more in a controlled manner, so that we're not getting really so we're not pulling the clay and causing those little weird flare-ups. Okay, and then I'm just going to kind of pull the material out, kind of make sure everything locks together here. Now I'm noticing here on the back he's got like no connective tissue here. So I'm going to add a little bit of that to it. So I'm going to make another little snake here. And it doesn't matter what material you use. I mean, we could use the Super Sculpey. You can use whatever material you've got there. Okay, so this branch here needs to have a little bit more thickness, just so that it ties into his leg proper. We don't want him to look like he's got paper thin hip joints there. We want him to have a good strong life there. So what we're going to do is we're just going to blend those two pieces in there, and then same thing up here. Kilroy says that is a great point to roll the tool. Awesome. Well, I'm glad I can give you these tips for free, guys. That's what this is for. This is so everybody can kind of get on the same page and enjoy sculpting with the tool. So, or sculpting with polymer clay. Again, I love doing this. To me, this is so relaxing to sit and just make something cool, something fantasy, something just a little bit fantastic, just to have some fun with the clay here. Alright, so we got that guy in there. Now remember, we had some texture on it. Okay. And we have been joined by Znado. Hello, good afternoon. So we're going to add that texture back in to it, so we make sure that all of our pieces look similar, even though we've just added some to it. We could probably even add a little bit to the back there if we wanted to. And then this one we're going to taper and make it look like it goes inside the other pieces there. Just like that. Take our tool. I'm going to blend the two pieces, and again, I'm constantly rolling. Even if I'm rolling just a little bit, I'm constantly rolling as opposed to pulling and pushing the clay. It's just going to make the clay work for you better. Okay, and that is the idea, is to make the clay work for you. It's that whole working smarter, not harder, which is what I'm a big proponent of here. So now I'm going to take the other piece, the other side here, and we're going to do the same thing. Now, if you notice, I flipped it over. Now, why did I flip it over? Well, it's because I'm a lefty. Okay, so if I work on it like this, I'm crossing myself. And you can even see because I'm crossing myself. That's not good. So I flip the piece upside down so that I can work away from myself again. And this is going to allow you to, one, see it in a new perspective. And that makes a huge difference when you're sculpting. A lot of times as people, because again, we like our patterns, we're going to stare at a piece straight on, and this is how it is. And we're just going to constantly turn it and work it like this. And it's always going to be the same perspective, but then something may seem off. The best way to tell if something is off or something needs a little bit of work is to put it in a unique position, a position that wouldn't necessarily be in. Okay, so you want to make sure that you're constantly looking at your sculpture, your piece, your work from different perspectives to see if something is not right or something is good, or just you may find out that keeping it in the upside down position, it looks better, and that's how the piece should be displayed. You never know, so always be adjusting your work and kind of working around it. All right. So now we've got. I'm going to blend that piece in there, and you can see I'm just slowly rotating the tool. It doesn't have to be broad strokes either. Nimbus says another lefty. Yep, I am another lefty. So there we go. All right. So there we go. Now we have our torso, or the hip area in place. Okay. And then I'm going to blend a little bit in top of here too, because we don't want these air pockets. Remember, those air pockets can be destructive to your pieces. Now, another reason that I multi-bake is because when I first started doing this, I had a friend who was really into this superhero, and so I made that superhero sculpture for him, but it was a big guy, like a hulking big guy. And when I made it for him, I just sculpted it all as one piece and then put it in the oven. I followed the directions of 15 minutes for every 1/4 inch of thickness, but apparently something didn't quite work great, and the center of it didn't get cooked enough. And I presented the piece and it looked great, but after about a year it started to crack and it fell apart. And then he threw it away, and I felt kind of brokenhearted because I was like, well, that was a piece that I made for you and it was a gift, but I understand, was it said, isn't the legs falling to the back? You said at the start you made it straight up. I did make it straight up. Yes, but you'll see why I'm going to counter that, okay? And the reason that is and I said that a little bit earlier, Williams, that when I have a tendency to do that with my pieces. I have a tendency to always make the legs pitch back, and that's because I'm going to have the torso pitch forward, okay? And it is something that I do unconsciously. And so as a sculptor, I always seem to do it. So what happened is when I put it into the oven and I set it up, I pitched the legs a little bit back because I'm like, yeah, that looks good. And it's just something that I do. Now, you can have them straight up and down. You can actually have them pitching forward if you'd like. It's really your call. I have a tendency to make them pitch backwards. And that's because what I'm going to do next is once we get to this point, all right, and we're not going to do it yet, but I want to kind of show you, I'm going to rough it in here, is I'm going to have the guy's torso pitching forward like that, okay? And he's going to be leaning on the staff, okay? Because that's why we created the staff there. So it's going to give us a third point for him to hold on to. But then as that comes up, his head is going to be more forward. So he's going to have kind of almost a frog look to him, okay? With the arm coming out. Oh, you can see the staff is done now. So the arm will be sticking out like that, and we're gonna have the staff sitting on the ground like that. Okay, so he's kind of got that like old frog kind of look to him. So that's just because I just do it and I don't know I'm doing it. I'm gonna create a short post like that. Okay, just a short post like so, and I'm gonna place this in the center of the hip. Okay. All right, and then I'm going to blend down the edges so that it becomes solid. And you notice I'm leaving a short little cuff around here. Okay, that's intentional. This doesn't have to look pretty. Okay, I just need it to be there in the center. And what this is going to do, and I'm going to for mine, because I'm pitching backwards, I'm going to pitch mine forward just a little bit, okay? And what that's going to do is that's going to act as a post for the torso to hang on to when we get this out of the oven again. We're going to be able to sculpt now around the torso, and that's our support. See, we started at the bottom, and we're building all of our support into this. Now I can take this and put this in the oven. The super glue will be fine holding this piece together. It will hold its rigidity. It will be okay. So since we just added a little bit more clay onto that figure, we don't need to cook them for half an hour. Even though it looks thick, it's only 1/4 inch of thickness on that figure. So we only need to bake it for 15 more minutes. And since the oven's already on, we don't have to worry about the pre-bake part of it. So we're just waiting for that clay to finish. Now we got our staff. Here's our lovely little staff here. Okay, that we're going to have him hold. Once this completely cures, it's going to be nice and rigid for him to hold. But we can still, I'm going to wait until it ridges up. Once it cures, dries, cools completely, I'll show you how flexible those pieces are. So we're going to set that over there to the side. Now the next part we're going to work on is his head. It's a good looking staff, thank you. All right, so now we're going to work on the head, okay? Now, why would we work on the head now if we don't have the torso done? Well, it's because we're going to place the head onto the neck, okay? Because for the neck, we're going to do another post, just like we did with the chest, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to make the head, and then we're going to leave a hollow spot so that we can attach the head and kind of move him to where we want him to be, have him looking in whatever direction we'd like him to look into, and then that way we can have a nice looking figure, and we can adjust it, make some character, and then we're going to add a little bit more clay to the neck to kind of flush everything together, okay? So, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to start with some eyeballs, okay? And so, I want fairly big eyeballs on this thing. I want like big old frog eyes on this guy. So, I'm going to make 2 big eyeballs. Now, there's a couple different ways that we can do this. Some people like to create an eyeball, create a sphere, you know, like an eyeball, make the eyes completely, and then they'll inset the eyes, they'll bake them and have them be nice and rigid. So that way you're not distorting the shape of the clay, okay? And then other people like to sculpt the skull and then kind of sculpt the eyeballs into it, okay? And we can go either direction. I think with this one, we're just going to actually kind of create the size of the eyes that we'd like to have, and we're going to work around it because I got that other piece in the oven. I don't want to waste the time waiting for these to cook. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave these 2 sitting aside here, and if you notice, they're not the same size. That's going to be funnier. Okay, it's going to look cuter. Okay, so I've got, and if I wanted to, I mean, we might as well. So let's we'll make one eye bigger. So that it looks funnier. So now I'm adding some clay to it. I really want to work that clay together, guys. You don't want it to have any of those air pockets in there, okay? So I'm doing this, it's a push, fold, push, fold, push, fold. That's how I blend my clay, okay? And then once I get it to a point where I'm happy with it, and then I start to work the pieces together so that we don't have any of those air pockets inside there. Okay. There you go. And so then again, I'm going to roll it in my hand. There we go. And so we have it. So now look at that. Now we got like a big eye and a little eye. That's gonna be funnier. So I'm okay with making them funnier. All right. So now we're gonna work with the head itself. Okay. So I'm gonna stick those off to the side. They call me Fumbledore. 10 points from Gryffindor. All right. Now we're going to work the other clay. Now we can use this clay. It doesn't matter which clay we're using. I'm just going to use this one. Oh, you're using Galame is using glass beads for eyeballs. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a basic head shape that we're going to put the eyes on. So I'm kind of going with this kind of a look here where the eyes are resting on top of the body. What we're going to do is we're going to create a cradle for the head. So if we're looking at it from the top, we want to have like a point towards the front. If this is the front, we want to point towards the front, going around to a curve in the back, okay? Because that point, that geometry there, if this is the front, is going to give us an area for a nose, okay? And then we're also going to have the ability to put, so like one eye is going to rest here, and the other eye is going to rest here on the top, okay? But that point with the curved back on it, the curved part of the back of the head is going to allow him to have a place to put his brain, and then the front point here is going to allow us to give a little bit of an area for the nose, the rest of the structures there. All right. Okay, so here we go. So we're going to take the piece here, and we're going to, again, now this is clay that I've already, you know, blended, and I know it's got no holes in it, so I'm basically just kind of working it into, I don't want a ball. I mean, I could. We could start with a ball if you wanted to. I mean, it's fine. Perfectly fine here. Whee! There we go. And I'm going to squish it a little bit. Okay, and then we're going to find the point. We're going to put a point into it so that we have a point like that. Now, if these were glass beads or if they were rigid beads, no, if they were rigid beads, we could push them in there and it'd give us a perfect place to put our eyeballs. But since they're not, I'm going to use my thumb. Okay, kind of give us a place to create. And again, this is our monster, so it's our little critter, so we can make them however we want. I'm just going to go with a basic structure for the skull that I know is found in nature, much like a frog. Okay, but we got the point there in the front. Okay, we got a nice rounded edge on the back. I'm going to look at it from different angles here. You can see that this side's a little bit shorter. Okay, so let's bring that one out. That's also where my larger eyeball is going to go. Okay. All right, and then we've got it kind of rounded on the back, looking at it from this angle. All right, then I can cradle one eye and the other eye there. Okay. Now, obviously, if your eyes are just sitting on top of your skull like that, they would they'd fall out. They'd roll away. Will this tutorial be available in the future? Yes, you'll actually be able to find this on YouTube at youtube.com/Paul Pape Designs. It will be there forever and ever and ever, or until they shut YouTube down. But yes, it'll be available later. So what we're going to do is, now that's where our eyeballs are going to go, and I think I love like all my pieces end up being cute. Okay, it's like I'm a big fan of making things cute. Even if I make horror-based things, they always end up being cute. I don't know why that is. Maybe I just think there's too much ugly in the world and I just want everything to be a little bit pretty. I don't know. But, so this guy's going to be cute. He's going to be funny, okay? And we're going to eventually put irises in there and stuff. But what he needs is something to hold his eyes in place. And I used to have a lot of frogs. I used to have frogs as pets. I love frogs. I think they're the silliest things. And their eyeballs are always on top of their head, and they're so huge. And you're like, how do you blink? And they actually use their eyes. They push them into their mouth to help them swallow. Helps them push their stuff in there. Adanterial says there's so much information. I'm afraid I'm gonna forget some stuff. It happens. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna add some eyelids, okay, to the top and to the bottom, because you've got eyelids on the bottom as well. Okay. So we're gonna add eyeballs on top and the bottom, and then I'm also gonna take a bit more clay. And what I'm doing is I'm basically, instead of creating a snake, I'm creating a tapered snake on either side, like that, okay? And I'm going to flatten it just a little bit, because I still want it to have some thickness, and then we're just going to lay that across the back. All right? So we got one eye lid there. And again, this is a fantasy guy. This is not, this is not high art. This is not an actual figure. I mean, if we wanted to do a human version of this, we could do that as a separate one. But this is a fantasy figure, just to have some fun. Okay, so we're going to, so there's our second under eyelid, and then we're going to do the same thing. We want two on the top. Okay. I hope I'm doing well. I am doing really well. I think we're having fun with our work-along Super Sculpey project here. Just making a fun little fantasy character. Actually, I'm wondering, should we make this guy so he's like squinting with one eye, and he's got one eye that's like really wide open? So something like that. So it looks like he's like going, Ooh, let's even do that. We'll do that with our mouth too. I think that'll be fun. We'll give him like a raised lip over on the other side. That'll be cute. Okay, so then we're gonna need to remove this back part here. We're gonna thin it out just a little bit more. Actually, we're gonna need a little bit more on there. So we're gonna do the same. See how it's the exact same thing, just made it bigger. Okay, and it's just to cover the back. Now you're thinking, well, why not just take this piece here and cover it all the way? It's because we want that ridge where that eyelid closes. Okay, we want that ridge right there, because that's the extra bit of the skin that helps to close all the way over the eye. That's why we're doing that. Okay, so yes, I still have a landline. Tongue out. You want the tongue out? You got it. All right, tongue out. That's what we're gonna do. Sure, we'll go with that. That'll be fun. Alright, so we're doing the same thing. We're creating a, you know, that little oval shape. Okay, but I know it's going to be more flat on the bottom. I work without even thinking about what I'm working on. I'm just like, I know what that's going to look like. So then we're going to put this back on here as well. Just like so. Okay, so that's going to give us our base structure. Now, obviously, we need to do some blending. Okay, because if we just shove that into the oven, that would not be the best looking piece. So now we're going to go in here and do some blending. Okay, I'm going to use my aluminum piece here, and again, we're rolling, and just roll the piece in to blend it into the bottom here. And then I'm going to do the same thing here, but I don't want to make it all even. I mean, otherwise there's no point in having that secondary ridge there. We just want the clay to blend into each other so that they become one piece. Okay, so we have one nice piece there, and then we can smooth all of this out just by taking our piece and we're just rolling it in between our fingers here. Rolling it. Now we may add a little bit more ridges to the back of his head, just so his eyeballs aren't just like that popped up off of his head. And then we're going to do this, but instead of rolling this into it, I'm just going to press it down gently. If you've got glass beads, this is a lot easier to do, or if you've got pre-cooked eyeballs, it's a lot easier to do. But what we're doing is we're just just kind of blending these two together here, just so it looks like it's all in the same eyeball here. If you wanted to leave that little gap in there, you could. It just make it look like the eyelid goes up underneath it. That's okay. All right, we're about halfway through our sculpt for the day, our time for the day. We should be able to, painting will take about an hour, so we've got about an hour to finish this guy up. Should be pretty easy. He's a pretty big guy for a 4-hour stream, but that's all right. Had big plans. Big plans! All right. Here we go, and then we're also going to blend this into the bottom here. It's got some bags under the eyes. It's been a long day for this guy. Okay, could you use wood beads for the eyeballs? You could. The only problem with wood is make sure that the wood is completely dry, because when you go to cook the clay is going to have a little bit of shrinkage to it, and also you don't want to trap steam inside the wood sphere. So you want to make sure that the ball is fairly dry, but if it's because the ball's not going to shrink very much, and if it's wet, it's going to it's going to want to exhaust itself of the humidity. If it is too dry, it's not going to shrink, and the clay is going to have a little bit of shrinkage. It's just minimal. It's very, very minimal. But if you've got a really thin edge or a really thick edge next to the wooden sphere, it's going to want to it may crack, and so you just want to be careful that it doesn't do that. Okay. All right, now you may be thinking to yourself, Paul, this is an awful lot of clay, my friend. And how are we going to bake that? Well, the nice thing is we can go put this in the oven as soon as the torso is done. This next stage is done, and then let it bake for like 45 minutes. Okay, that's going to be okay, and it'll get nice and rigid. But then we got to add it to the neck. And then we've got to bake it again. So we're not getting that full bake right off the top. Because, I mean, this piece here should be about an hour and a half. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go grab that other piece out of the oven so we can set it out here to cool off while we finish making this head. Looks a little bit like Battletoads, doesn't it, Dylan? Subconsciously making some Battletoads here. And we're just, basically, we're just blending these two pieces together again. Just like we did with the other side. Thank you, Sarah, for the 0 host there. I do appreciate it. Okay, and then again, we're going to blend these two pieces together so that it's a little bit smoother. Smooth jazz, that's right. Okay, so now we've got the two eyeballs there. Like a cone, basically what it is. This is a giant cone here, and we're going to stick it right in between the two eyes, like that. Now I'm going to grab my guy here. Okay, he just came out of the oven. So he's a little bit wibbly wobbly. All right, but I'm going to put my head on here, and you can see, like, I'll bring this away here. Like, tip it up, Paul. There we go. He's a big heavy dude here, like this. Okay, that's a big head on that guy. I mean, his torso's probably gonna be about that big, just like that. Okay, so this head may be a bit big, you know. So we want to make sure that we've got a lot of rigidity in there to make sure that it holds together. And actually, I'm looking at this and I'm like, I think it might be too big. I don't know, because if I put a torso on this guy, I can make it about this big. This is the great thing about fantasy stuff. You can just make it up as you go along, you know? So if we're like, that's the T section of his, and he's sitting here like this, I mean, it's not horrible. It is big, but I don't know if it's too big. Maybe. I think this one eye might be a little bit big. And I'm afraid if I keep adding clay, yeah, so what we're going to do is we're going to change it. Look at this. Changing it on the fly, but that's okay. You know, because I like, look at that, and I think that's perfect. You know, that's what I want. Like, that's cute. So maybe the eyes are just too big, and that's okay. You know, we can make these things up as we go along. So let's take this eyeball here, remove the clay out of it, and again, you do what you want to do. You know, I'm not saying that there's a right way and a wrong way. Okay, I'm just saying. Well, thank you, Kilroy, for that host. I do appreciate it. No, it's all right. You know, we just where's my, okay, so I'm going to use my X-Acto knife here, and I'm actually going to cut this in half. Okay, so I have half an eye. Now let's look at that. Ah, see, I think that's a lot better. I think that's a lot better. I like that a lot better. Okay, so, you know, and that's the great thing about being, you know, about doing something with clay, about being creative. I mean, we're in the process here. This thing's still going to cool off. It's going to get, you know, it's going to get nice and rigid, and we still got a little bit of time here to play with this. I mean, and it is perfectly acceptable to change your mind, you know, and that's the creative process right there. You know, you look at something, you're like, is that right? Is that wrong? I don't know. And again, it's a fantasy figure, so is it right? Is it wrong? That's really your call. It doesn't matter. I just I thought it was maybe just a little bit too big. So, you know, change it up. Change it up. Doesn't hurt anything. So I'm blending the eyes in. We're still going to do the eyelids, guys. So I'm just going to do it really fast here so that you can kind of see. I'm going to work at Paul speed as opposed to tutorial speed, so you guys can see what I'm doing, exactly how fast I can work here. And I don't feel like I need to. Ooh, but look what happened here. Okay, so look at that. See, and happy accidents, guys. I'm alright with that. That texture that's around the eye there, that little like that knotty texture, knotty and Knotty, knotty texture that's around it because he's a wooden guy. I like that, and that's all from blending the previous eyes around that. So I'm like, oh, that looks really, really slick. So what I'm going to do is I'm probably going to incorporate that back into it. And I wouldn't have seen that had I not changed the eyes. You know, happy accidents, guys. Happy accidents. So looks a little bit like an alien at Ontario. Yeah, a little bit. That's all right. So I'm going to add my eyelid to the bottom there. But, you know, hey, happy accidents. That's nothing wrong with that. Blend these two pieces back together. Now there's a different way to blend. I mean, you can blend using this, but if you need to actually like eliminate fingerprints, or you need to eliminate brush marks or rake marks or anything like that, you can actually use a little bit of naphtha, which is lighter fluid, guys, and or you can just buy straight naphtha if you want to. It is toxic, so be careful with it, but you can use that on a brush, on a soft brush, and you can actually brush it into the clay, and it will help to eliminate a lot of those lines and smooth everything else out. Okay, so that's one way to deal with it. I personally will do that a lot if I have to do a really smooth surface. But you can also, if you've got like a sphere or something like that, and you need to see, that's not bad. I like that. That looks cute. If you got a sphere or something, and you need to and you want to polish it up, you can actually polish Super Sculpey really, really nicely. The best way I have found to get Super Sculpey to get a high sheen is to rub it, like sand it, but sand it on denim. Okay, I know it sounds weird, but if you take Sculpey that is cooked, I mean it's completely cooked and it's good, you know, it's hardened and all that fun stuff, and you rub it on denim, it will create a super high sheen to it. It's really, really nice, and so that's a trick for the future. So if you've got like if you're making beads or something like that, and you want to have a bunch of beads that are glossy, you can actually take a piece of denim, put them in the middle, and just kind of rub them together like that. And as long as the pieces are nice and rigid, as long as they're fully cured, they'll start to shine up, and they'll get like glossy, shiny. I mean, it's really, really nice. All right, so there's one. Do the other one there. Maybe he needs another ridge back here. Let's do a series of ridges. Let's just do that. Let's just do a series of ridges. I don't mind that. Again, it's my piece, so, you know, and I'm making it up. Now, if I had, you know, if I was reproducing something and I wanted it to be more accurate, you know, then you get out your calipers and you do your measurements and all that. But since this is a fantasy piece, and we're just playing, you know, trying to learn some techniques and just incorporate it into a nice little like fairy style woodland something creature, you know, it is okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a W. Okay, like that. So we got a pointy in the middle, and then two little curls at the end. Okay, maybe it's like a really sad 3 or E. I guess that'd be a sad 3 that way. And then I'm going to set that in the center here, like that. And I'm going to do just 2 more little ridges like that. 1. They're getting smaller. So just twist each end. And it gives me the little bit at the end there. Should we do one more? One more. It's just a little dot. There you go. It just gives us some ridges to play with here on this little dude. Then we also want that little nose that's on there. Now, Kilroy says that, wow, that is so cool. I'm not very talented in sculpting, but this actually motivates me. Now, here's the thing. If you notice, I'm not sculpting a figure. I mean, we're sculpting a figure in the long run, yes. But what we're doing is we're playing with small geometries and blending them together to create an overall figure. Okay, and so if you notice, I started with a W, you know, and then or we start with these little like kind of like bananas or what, you know, and we're just adding them to it, and then it's about blending them together. So here we're going to add that nose feature back in. Actually, I think it needs a wider nose, and then that's all it is. It's just looking at your geometries or just seeing your geometries, laying it in there, and as long as you can kind of see it, you know, you get. I think that's nice, and we're going to give him just a little mouth here. Burp. Oh, no, we want to do that lip. Okay, so again, we're going to do another banana. Burp. Burp. Okay, but we're going to make the one side of the banana longer, okay, and thinner. All right. Like that, okay. So he's like he's doing this. Okay. Now, it's too cool. Great stuff, man. You're very welcome. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to blend these parts together. And it's just, again, it's gentle touch, guys. And we're just going to roll and blend these two together to give us all of those wrinkles and pieces that stand out so that they're all one piece. And since it's soft Sculpey on soft Sculpey, it's uncured Sculpey onto uncured Sculpey, we're able to just blend them together without having to use any kind of binder or anything like that. We just want to make sure that all of our seams are covered. They don't have to be. I mean, if I'm doing clothing or if I'm doing anything like that, I'll leave actually an open edge and I'll blend them together. Maybe the next one of these I'll actually show you like the tips and techniques for doing clothing. I think that would be a really fun piece to do, to kind of show you how to do outfits and stuff like that. Because there's always different ways to do it, and what I teach may be completely different from what somebody else would teach, and that's perfectly fine. Everybody's got, just like tools are very individual, people's sculpting techniques are also very individual. But this is just how I do it, and I've been doing it for a while, and I'll impart whatever wisdom I can to you guys, and then hopefully what happens is you guys take this information and you bend it to work best for you, and then you start to make your own pieces, and you have your own techniques, and you figure out how you best do it, and then your style starts to kind of form out of that, and it's just about patience and about working with the material. And this is why I like this material. It's so versatile. I'm like, we're making an amorphous structured piece here. I'll try to start making my own pieces. You should, Swanee. I think you'd be pretty good at it. But I think that it's this is the great thing about this clay, is there's no right or wrong. I've got a 6-year-old who is just now starting to get into this, and I gave him some clay, and he is a big fan of Pokemon, and so he sits and sculpts all the Pokemon he likes. He has the card in front of him and he sculpts it, and would it be considered a professional sculpting job? No, he's 6 years old, but when he sees it, when he's looking at it, he made it, and he sees that toy. He sees that professional version of it, because that's his, it's his hands that made that, and so what he sees is this great piece. So do you need to be perfect at it right out the bat? Absolutely not. There is no point in in thinking that you have no room to grow and that you need to be perfect with it. You just get it in your hands and play with it, and that's so much of the fun of it. That is why I like it so much. And I'm actually going to give him some of the same ridges on his nose here, just so that he's got some of the same texture to and fro here. So what I'm doing is I'm just pushing up the clay around it so he gets some of those same weird ridges. Okay, there. Then I'm just going to use my thumb here, kind of blend those two pieces together, give them kind of a flat blended into the bottom of the lip there. Alright, and then I'm also going to give him some pupils here. So I'm going to do one pupil there. Okay, and give him another one here. Alright, now what I can do is I can also take a larger one. Alright, okay, so that's cooling off a lot there. Now, the other thing I wanted to do is, if you look on the drawing here, I kind of have these nice little jowls that are kind of going on it there. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to actually take this and I'm going to curl it under using my hand. Okay, I'm going to curl it under. Oh, I need to blend those last two pieces in the back. That's okay. So I'm going to curl it under using one finger and my thumb in the background. And if you notice, it kind of creates these individual leaf-like pieces. Then I can pinch each one. And look, there's something stuck to my finger. It's old glue, and it already created the center vein of these little leaf pieces that I'm making. Okay, so we've got those nice little leaves. Now let's finish blending in these last two pieces here. Ah, that's what we'll do. Aha! Yaharg! Paul's thinking now. So that's the thing. You look at this piece, you do a little bit of work, and then you're like, oh, that makes sense. Oh, that'll work. That'll be nice. So now what we're going to do is, because we know we've got this guy's made of leaves, kind of thing. So we're going to come in here and we're going to actually draw in our leaf textures and stuff. And this leaf, now his hair. Now, if we wanted to, we could layer it up too, so we can take our. That's right, happy accidents, says Doodle. So we can actually take our tool and we're going to press in. So if you notice, it's not flat; it's at an angle, and we're going to press in. The techniques are here. I mean, you can, and yes, I do, and that is the curse of being you know, having done this for a while, is that, you know, you make things look simpler than they actually are. But the techniques are there. I mean, you just need to practice the techniques, and that's all it is. I'm just adding some little veins in it, and you know, I spend a lot of time looking at things. You know, I like to look at leaves. I like to look at nature. I like to, you know, so I'll go outside and I'll look at the structure of leaves, and you know, you just put that to memory. You know, so there we go. So now we've got this weird looking dude. We're gonna give him some nostrils because he looks like he's got a nose but he can't breathe. So we're gonna add a couple more nostrils. You know, there we go. He looks kind of like a Muppet. But then I'm gonna add some texture to him as well. Right here, here. And then just a little bit under the lip here. Both directions there. Galame says, we need a hashtag so we can each see each other's end work. I would love to see that. Yeah, just do, you could do, let's see, what would these guys be called? You could do hashtag Paul Pape Designs, and then, and if you also do Paul Pape, so hashtag Paul Pape Designs, then I'll definitely be able to see it. And then if you do Paul Pape Designs and something else, let's see, what should the other hashtag be? It should be, it could be Dryad, D-R-Y-A-D. That might be too hard to spell though for some people. Sculpey Clay Paul Pape Designs. That's a great one there, Sarah. All right, so we've got our guy. Paul Pape class. You can do that too. Yeah. Okay, so we got our guy here. He's giving a funky little thing there. Let's, yeah, I don't want to have a little tongue on there. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to put 2 holes in the side here. Okay, I'm going to put a hole right here. All right, I'm going to put a hole in the other side as well. And that's for later. Because we're going to add ears to him eventually. Okay, so now we got this weird looking little dude here. Okay, so we're going to go put this in the oven, and I'm going to cook this for about 45 minutes. Okay? He can hear eventually, and now our body. Ooh, yeah, that's nice. And see, now look, it no move because it's nice and cool. That's what we want. Okay, so we got the head in there cooking away. All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to create the torso on top of this guy. All right, now he's got a big old head. He's got a big old head on this guy, and so what we want to do is we want to make sure that the torso is kind of proportionate. I mean, obviously, when you're making, especially when you're making cute things, the bigger the head, the cuter it's going to be, because it's kind of like a baby. You know, a baby's got a big head, tiny little body. That's what makes it cute. Big eyes makes it even cuter. So we want a torso, but we don't want a I mean, we could make the torso this big. So he's got these spindly little legs and this super giant torso, and then his head would be normal size. You know, it'd be proportional. But because I want him to be more comical looking, I want to do a proportional size to his legs torso, and then the bigger head, because I think it's just going to look cuter in the long run. All right. So again, the torso is going to be 2 trapezoids, one on top of each other. So we want to make sure we have trapezoid 1 and then trapezoid 2. Because if you look here, you've got these muscles here that come up to your neck. Nobody's straight up across, okay? You would look weird. You wouldn't be able to move your neck, okay, if you didn't have these on here. I believe they're deltoids, but I'm not 100% sure if that's what they're called. I don't know my muscles, I just know what they are. Thank you for that follow there, Vilecat. You would look insectoid 2 with detail. Yes, that it could. And then your neck, a lot of people don't know, but your neck does not sit straight up and down. Your neck actually sits forward. Okay, your neck is not straight up and down. Even on a human, your neck's not. It's forward, and then your head sits on it like at an angle. Okay, so it's not straight up and down. So it's something we got to be got to be conscious of as well. All right, so now what we're gonna do is we're gonna add a little bit of super glue to this part here, and that's just because we want our wet clay to stick to our cured clay. Okay. I'm running low on clay. I should have opened up my other bottle, but there we go. So I'm just going to add a little bit, and we're just adding it to the very top. Okay, just a little bit. Now, if you look, it's just to the top here, not all the way down at the bottom there. So we're kind of lay it on top like it's a pizza dough, and then we're going to push the clay down around it. Okay, and what that's going to do, that little bit of super glue at the top is going to kind of move down over the entire post there, and it's going to coat the entire thing. But it's not so much that's going to come out the bottom, because we don't want it to come out the bottom. It will Hey, Mel. Lady Malika is here. She says, morning, just checking in on things. I think we're doing okay here. We're making a weird-looking boglin or dryad or, I don't know, some kind of woodland dude. I don't know. He's just something. We're just making him up. We're just having some fun here. Doing some basic anatomy, but kind of showing off some different techniques. Oh, I was going to say, this is cured now. So now we can look at the flexible clay. Like, look, that clay is like super flexy. Blee, blee, blee. And then this is the regular Sculpey, so it's rigid. Okay, and then this is the blend, and it has a little bit of movement to it. Not a lot. It has a little bit, but this flexy stuff, I mean, tis flexy. Alright, but that's going to be his staff, so we're going to put his staff like right here. And he's going to be like, hey, I'm holding that. Okay, a weird dude. That's what we're making, a weird dude. Alright, so now what we're now that the clay is on there, and it's stuck, it ain't going anywhere, okay? It's we're going to put it on there. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just blending in the bottom. Now remember we created that little lip around the outer edge here? That's because I want them to have this cool belt of leaves that kind of stick up around it, okay? Yes, you need that. She says, I need that clay for my Murloc, says Adantarial. And yeah, the Murloc is kind of looks like this guy, except that he's mostly fish. And so here we are with our two trapezoids. We got trapezoid 1 coming to here, and then trapezoid 2 over there, okay? I mean, we're still working out the shape of it. We're just laying it in place right now. But that gives us a really nice piece. And I'm going to kind of hunch his shoulders a little bit, okay? See how I'm like, whoop. Okay, so we're just taking that and I'm hunching his shoulders. Now, there is some basic anatomy that I'm going to teach you guys. A bog whippet. Paul Pape. A bog whippet. A bog whoppet? Is that what it is, Doodle? Okay. Alright, so I'm going to teach you some basic anatomy. Alright, so in order for an object to stay vertical, okay, it needs to have two things. It needs to have bone structure up its back, okay, so we're going to have like a spine. So if we go in and we pinch this, pinch, 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 okay, we've got ourselves a spine. So we know that's where our spinal structure is going to go, okay. He's wearing shorts or something, so we don't need it down there, okay. So, but the problem is okay, so you've got the bone structure here, but how is he staying upright? Well, he's probably got a little bit more bone structure going on in his ribs, okay, so that ribs is going to help contain everything that's inside of him, okay. So if we wanted to, we could go in here and we could draw those out. We could say, okay, so he's got some ribs in here and some ribs on this side, okay. He's probably gonna have more than 3. You know, probably gonna have like 7 or 8. All right, and then he's gonna have muscle structure, and muscle, that's the key here, okay? So even though he's a fantasy dryad short shorts, that's right, Doodle. Okay, so even though he's a fantasy figure, he's still gonna have some muscle structure, otherwise he's not gonna be able to stand upright. And that's the thing is, even the greats like Picasso or Michelangelo, all those, they studied human form. I mean, that was important to them to know. Like Picasso, even though he drew people's faces like all over the place, he started originally as a classical painter, and he would work constantly on understanding the physical form. And then once you understand the physical form, the human form or animal form, then you can take that and manipulate it so that you can learn and create other new pieces that could be based in a reality. And that's the cool thing. So what we're going to do is we're going to say he's got muscle structure. So he's going to have to be able to lift some arms. Okay, so he's got to lift his arms. Well, your pectoral muscles are the muscles that help you to control where your arm movement goes. It's also the ones on top of your arm there. So what we're going to do is we're going to give him some pecs. Okay, male or female, you're all going to have pecs, guys. And girls, that's just the way it is. And then we're also going to give him some abs. Okay, not like rock hard abs, but we're just going to give him some ab muscles. Okay, we could even, if we wanted to, we could give him a paunch. Okay, but because wouldn't that be funnier if he's got like a little bit of a, you know, he's rocking the dad bod. You know, so let's just do that. We're going to give him a little bit of a dad bod paunch. But again, that's because there's muscle structure though. So the muscles are still here, even though they're covered in a little bit of fat. Those muscle structures are still there, and that's what's going to give him. And see, that paunch actually justifies him like leaning over a little bit. So, all right. So we could even be more humorous with it if we wanted to, and give him like a really funny gut. Okay, and we're just using our thumbs to blend it, give a rough blend here. We can go back into using our tools in a little bit. Okay, and we just want to make sure that we get everything kind of laid in there at the bottom. All right, but see, we're still sticking with our muscle structures here. Okay, so we've got the pectoral muscles here, and we got our sternum going in there, and then like this would be the rib cage. In theory, we've got like ribs coming up through here and ribs coming down through here. If we use our blending tools, now the belt just went out the window. Oh no, we'll still make it there, and that's what'll make it funny. That belt will still be there. We're just gonna make it so that it sticks underneath him, or it's like popping out. So it'll pop out this way, but then come up around the back. See, it's still there. It's still there. All right, and then we're gonna ship that in. So that kind of gives us the idea of like where his rib cage would be. Okay, and then we need to blend in the pectoral muscles. Okay, and we're gonna end up blending these straight up. Okay, like that. Same thing on the other side, but I'm gonna flip it over because I'm a lefty. Okay, and then I'm going to, this is why I have the hook in here. Hook. Hook. Okay. And then I'm actually going to come in here, I'm going to hook again. And same thing on the side. Hook again. There we go. Alright, and we're going to blend underneath this. So turn it upside down again. It's going to give us our pectoral muscles. Okay, so he needs a little bit more in the, he needs moves then to go with the paunch. Well, we could possibly do that. Okay, so now we're going to add a little bit more. These side, the lats, I believe is what they're called. The lat muscle, the side of the rib cage muscles here. I mean, he's not muscular, but you still have the muscles. I mean, you don't have to be a bodybuilder to have these muscles. They just need to, you have to have the muscles, or the muscles in there just to be able to control how your body moves. And since this is a bipedal woodland creature thingy, we're going to give him these hair muscles. So okay, pull that pectoral down just a little bit more. There we go. Now, do we give this guy a belly button? No, he's not a mammal. He's made of wood. And just blending these two together, give ourselves more of a, there we go. So get some more structure in there. There we go. Looks like he's got multiple moves here, but that's not what we want. So now we're gonna take this and we're just gonna blend it, make it a little bit softer here, just where those ribs were ending. And then I'm gonna give him a little bit more structure in the pectorals. Paunch, that's the Three Musketeers, one of the Three Musketeers, something like that. Okay, so we're gonna give him a little bit more. Blend that in. An acorn poking out where his belly button would be, says Sarah. Well, we could do that. Sure. There we go. Just adding some. And see how well this clay. This is why I love good fresh clay, because just look how well this blends. I mean, it's just like soft touches, and you're just like blend, 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 and it's good to go. I mean, I just really like it. And even though it's a softer clay, you know, Super Sculpey is a softer clay. I'm not using the medium or the firm. I mean, that's okay. I mean, you can still get all the detail. I feel you can get a lot of the detail. Now, if I wanted to come in here and do like rope or if I was sculpting really, really tiny, I'd want to use a firmer clay, just because I know that if you're using the softer clays and you're sculpting really, really fine details, it's going to be harder to it's going to be harder to get all of those details in there. But just there we go. Maybe we'll show a little bit of the rib there just by gently pressing on the side there. Just gently pressing on the side. There we go. There. Not quite moves. Now the other thing is he's gonna have a collarbone because he's got a head, right? So we're gonna press down right on the top here, because he's going to have a collarbone, because otherwise he can't lift his arms, right? So he's got to have a little bit of a collarbone there, all right? And then this is where the head's going to be. Now we're going to add to that eventually, so that not even done and I have a name. Oh, good. Excellent. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to add those leaves around his bed. Now if we come back here to the back, we didn't do much blending. So we can just take our finger here and we're just going to pinch down here at the bottom. Just pinch, 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 pinch. And that's going to help blend that together. See, it just disappears there. Pinch, pinch. And that's the nice thing about the multi-bake is that I'm coming in here and I can just pinch that area and it blends it right into into the baked part of it really nicely. Now this part here I'm going to leave down because we want that kind of like over the belly paunch there. It's a belly full of maple sap, says Ad Anterior. There we go. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a couple little of these balls and we're going to pull it so that we get that teardrop shape. Okay. And we're going to kind of stick them up around the outer edge. So again, we just create a little teardrop shape like that, flatten it a little. Okay. We're going to, and this is his leaf belt. And they can all be, once you bake them, it'll be maple syrup. Yeah. Too true. Very, very true. All right. So we're just going to do different size leaves here. We're going to have them. And if, they don't all have to be the teardrop shapes. I mean, if maybe he's got some oak leaves on here. And you do that by pinch and then pinch in the middle again. Okay. So you pinch, pinch, and then you get that like kind of little 5-star shape there. And then we pinch, pinch, pinch. Okay. And we get that little 5-star or 5-point star shape there. However you want to do it. Holly leaf. Yeah, it looks kind of a little bit like a holly leaf. Yep. So then we're just going to keep adding some of those around the back here. Now on the back here, because he's wearing a belt that's made out of these like little leaf type of things, we're gonna do a little rope that goes around there too. That's kind of holding it up, like a little twine, little vinage or something like that. That's kind of holding all these up, and we're gonna do that over these leaves to kind of make them look like they're standing up. So, and and we're gonna come in here. We're gonna add the veins to it, just like we did with the head one there. And they're all just irregular. They're a regular shape. They can be whatever you want them to be. Now I'm using regular Sculpey here. If you wanted to, if you're afraid that you're going to bump those off and break them, you could go ahead and use that Super Bacon Bend. That stuff would be great for doing this. Or you could use a blend of Sculpey and the Ultralight, which again I like a lot. It's kind of like my go-to. So we're going to say that his belly is eating half of these, but we're going to kind of have a couple that stick up a little bit funky on the side. This one here, I want to make sure that it blends in really well, so I'm just going to kind of touch that in there. Maybe on top too. Burp, burp, burp. Just to make sure that it doesn't come undone there. And then one more. We're going to do one more. That one's sticking up. Like so. Okay, so now we'll go in and we'll add our little veins to it. And you could add the veins before or after. I mean, it doesn't really, it's really your call here. So I'm just going to come in, I'm turning them upside down so that I can see the tops of it. And if you notice, I'm placing my finger underneath it. Okay, so if you look here, so I'm taking my finger, this finger here, and I'm placing it underneath it if it needs it. Like this one doesn't really need it. Well, I guess it is, so, and then I'm drawing my knife around it. But like some of these don't need it. Some of these, like this one here, is going to stay pretty much where it's at. But if I want it to stick out a little bit, that's why I would put my finger underneath it. Just kind of hold it in place. Same thing here. This one's kind of floating. I don't want it to fall off, so. More here. And lastly, oh no, I've got one more after this. It says, I like how it's pulling it to make it more irregular shape, says Beeves. Yes. Yes, we get these nice little bits on the side and stuff, yeah. Now, see, this guy's going to want to come off, so we're going to kind of make sure we stick him in there really good. Make sure we get to all the 5 points there on this guy. Okay, so there we go. Now he's got that nice little. Let me look at him, little fatty dude. He's cute. Okay, so now what we're gonna do is we're gonna do a twine. Okay, and this is why I really like. Another reason I really like this clay is it's so versatile, guys. It really is. So one of the things that I do a lot of in wedding toppers is that I make a lot of curly hair. Okay, and curly hair is one of the harder things to do, especially if you're trying to do like a cartoon version of curly hair. Because if you do too much, it looks messy, you know, or it looks like it's unfinished or it's not clean, you know. But if you do too little, it doesn't look curly. So this is what I do. I've developed this technique, and I think it works really well. So you're gonna make a snake, okay, and then what I want you to do, sort of here, is I want you to gently press down on it. So you're kind of flattening it out. Don't flatten it. You just want to have so that it has a little bit more flatness to it, so it's oblong, okay. And this is what we're going to do is we're making the rope here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to twist. Okay? So for the twine belt, we're going to do a really tight twist. But for curly hair, you would do less of one. So see, now we can get see how we're twisting this up, and we're going to get a nice rope out of this. Now, for curly hair, I'd leave it so that it has all these ridges on it, but for like a belt or something like that, I'm going to actually smooth it out a little bit by rolling it on the ground here. Whee! And what that's going to do is it's going to create this nice rope technique. See? And it's back to being round again. All right, that's what we're after here. So now what I can do is I can take this rope and I can feed it around. Let's move the camera back a little bit so you guys can see some more. There we go. So we can see what we're doing here. Because seeing is believing. No, because seeing helps with the learning. Then I'm going to pull. I'm going to pull it just a little bit, and we notice we lost a leaf here. That's okay. We're going to blend that right in just a second. So we're going to put that leaf back in there. And then using one of our tools. And the reason that I pull it is so that I can tuck it underneath, and it looks like it's traveling up underneath his body there. And see how we lost that leaf? I can just go and tack that right in there on that wet clay. Like that. And then on this same side over here, I'm going to pull this up just a little bit, and I'm going to pull it too until it comes off and it tapers. And then I'm going to tuck it up underneath there, so it makes it look like his belt goes up underneath his belly. Well, thank you for those tender victuals, Mooncloud. Alright, so now I've noticed I've lost some of the twist, but see, I know what the twist should look like, so I can take my tool here. As long as I'm running in the same angles, I can get the twists back into it. So now this one goes the opposite direction. Okay, and then using a little bit of saliva for my lubricant, but you can use water, it doesn't matter, you don't have to look. I just happen, it seems to be my go-to here. Alright, we're just going to kind of clean that up a little bit. And we've got this little bit of a body here. Now on the back here, I'm going to press this in on either side. So we're going to flip them over. Give him two more there. 1, 2. Okay. So that kind of gives us an idea of where his spine's going to be. Okay. Oh, and thank you for following me there, Roy. Thank you, Roy. I got a little bit of something stuck on that. I think it's a little bit of super glue on the bottom of my tool here. So if that happens, you know, just that's why I use metal tools here, guys. Just take a little bit of a sharp brush here. Okay, there we go. Let's clean that up. Now what I want to do is I want to take this and I'm just going to pull these out. Okay, I want to leave the centers. But we're just going to pull these out. Okay, and we're going to do the same thing on the other side. See that little bit of lubricant on there, be it water, be it spit, whatever you want to use, guys. That's just, it just helps to make the tool move over the surface of it. Okay. Alright, there we go. So we got a little bit of a the spine going there, so we have an idea of where that's going to be. And then we also going to have, he's going to have some shoulder muscles too. So we're going to see a shoulder like here, and we're going to see a shoulder like right around there. Okay, but they're going to be a little bit bigger. DNA proof that you made it. Yeah, well, you know, I put a little of myself in every single one of my sculptures. So we're going to do a little bit of shoulder there. Seems to be about the same amount of clay on both sides. And there, so that we got shoulders, so that we know where the shoulder is going to go. Okay, now we need to blend those in. So on the top, we're just going to take this and we're just going to blend it right over. Bleep. Like so. And then same thing over here. Blend, blend, blend. Okay, because your shoulder blade comes out the back, as it has a bit of a ridge there. All sculptors say that. That's right. So there we go. And then that's going to blend into the muscle next to the spine there. So this side is going to move into the spine. And then we're going to have that same curl under here, but we want to keep that ridge because that's where that bone is. There we go. So now we've got two shoulder blades there. Okay. Now, we know that we're going to have, it's not your sculpt until you've mixed your tears into the clay, says Swanee. Yeah? I don't cry into my clay. Okay, so what we want now is we want to make sure we have a neck. Okay, so we're going to use some of the firm. That's fine. Okay, we're going to make sure. Now, we know that this guy's got a big old head, right? And that big old head's sitting in the oven right now. Okay, so we need to make sure it's got a post that it can sit onto. Okay, so we're going to take a bit more clay. And again, so move this up a little bit. We don't want it to be straight up and down, okay? Like that. No, we want it to be forward. Okay, like that. Okay, because that's how our spines come up and forward, and then that head's going to sit off to the side. The head is going to sit like this. Okay, so you want to make sure that neck goes forward. All right. And again, we're building this whole thing without an armature. You could do this whole thing with an armature, and you know, it'd be perfectly fine. You know, I'm just showing you that it's not absolutely necessary to have one. It can help, but it is not absolutely necessary. Now, what we want it to do is we want it to be a taper this way, because we're going to put it into the head, and then we're going to actually go the opposite direction. My guy is slumping, not fired yet, only legs. I put him in the freezer for a few. Is this okay? Yeah. Yep. Says that forward posture is with your head forward. I mean, you don't want to be like way out there, but everybody's head goes forward. It's the nature of it's the S curve of the spine. Your spine, you know, you shouldn't be like this. Okay, with the human head here. Okay, it's this. Okay, with the human head here. Okay, that's your neck right there, guys. It's not going to be straight up and down. If it's straight up and down, you look weird. You look like this. Anyways, take all your jokes seriously. I'm just clarifying, because it never hurts to clarify there. All right. So now that we've got, I want to make sure this is nice and cleaned up here. All right. But yeah, putting them in the freezer is going to help to solidify it a little bit more, to help take the heat off of it. Absolutely. So that's going to help. If you are going to do them all as one piece, you were figure one. That's right. So if you're making the entire thing before baking it once, you're going to want to make sure that you have a decent support structure around it. Okay. Sometimes I've got like these helping hands that are all made out of metal, so these things can actually like be in the oven and stuff. And I'll like position these. I'll put a little ball of clay on the end of it, and then kind of like place it here, so that just basically you're taking a chunk of clay like this and setting it here, so that it doesn't go anywhere, or putting it like next to the torso, and then doing the same thing on the back. You can do things like that as well. Just build your support around it. Or if it's an entire figure without the base attached to it, you can lay it in that fiber fill, like I said before, and that would be perfectly fine too. All right, so now we got that in there. Now the other thing that we're going to need to do is we're going to need to do arms. Okay, so we need to make sure that he's got some arms coming out of his shoulder sockets here, so that we know that that you know, he'll actually have arms out there. Now we know we have this one staff here that he's going to be holding, and I'm going to probably do it like that. So I'm actually going to flatten out this bottom here. I'm going to cut a little bit off the bottom here. That's the nice thing about this clay. See, it's nice and rigid there. A nice solid bottom there. All right, so I'm going to do it like this. All right, so he's got a nice piece to hold on to. So I want to make sure that the arm comes down and then back up, and he's going to kind of grip it there. Okay, or maybe it'll be out here. So I'm going to have this part of his arm come down. So I'm going to add another little connector piece here, there, and then this other arm, I'm not 100% sure what to do with the other. Oh, the sleepy kitty in the background there, right over here. Yeah, that's my sleepy kitty, monkey. He's just kind of hanging out for the day there. This other arm, maybe you'll have him. Yeah, maybe he'll be holding a bucket of minnows or something like that. So we're going to do an arm that kind of comes out to the side there like that. All right, so we've got these two little stumps, and that's because we're going to, again, no armature here, so we're going to add these little pieces in here, and then we're going to build the arms around it once it comes out of the oven. So we're going to put these pieces in here, and we're going to blend them together. So we're just taking our sharp piece here, and again, always turning, always turning, always turning. That's the secret here. So we're going to sculpt the piece in here. And if you notice, like we did in the bottom here, we got regular Sculpey and we got the Sculpey medium here, or that's firm. I think it was firm. And it's 6 of 1. You know, the detail is in both of them. I mean, detail there, same details in this other one. It's a little easier to see in the gray one just because it's a neutral color. If you find yourself needing to work in a neutral to be able to see all the textures and pieces that you're putting in there, you know, go with the gray, go with the medium there. I always paint my pieces with acrylic paint when I'm done, so I don't worry so much about like the color. So, and I'm used to the flesh tone of the Super Sculpey. So now, if you notice, the arms are inside that weird shoulder piece here. Okay, and hey, Lindsay, how are you today? And same thing here. I've got that little cliff there. There's a reason for that, because we're going to build the arm around it. Okay, and so he's going to have a shoulder muscle here. Okay, he's going to have that muscle there, but we don't need it right now. We want, because we're making basically the core for where his arms are going to sit. Okay, so there we go. There's that piece there and that piece there. Now this we could go put into the oven. We're going to do 15 minutes on that one, just because it's going to be multi-baked again. So, all right, so I'm going to cool this thing off really quickly in some cool water here. Now you could run the risk of thermal shock on this, but it's rare, especially as long as you don't have like air pockets in here, that you'll run into thermal shock, which is when it'll crack because it's so hot and it goes to really cold. I mean, it's not icy water. This is just basically cool water that pulled from the sink, but it'll allow us to work on it faster. But if you've got the time, you know, I'd just let it cool down to room temperature on its own. Since we're trying to bust this out here really quickly, I'm going to do it that way, so we can get his ears on here. All right. So now we've got his head here. Okay, his goofy looking head. Okay. Now if you notice, we don't have the hole for the neck. Oh, nose. No, that's okay. We're going to drill that out. And that's another great thing about the Super Sculpey that I like, is once it is rigid, you can actually drill into it using tools, like actual tools. So we're going to use an actual drill bit. Once this thing fully cures and we get the body, the torso, the body out of it, and we know about where this needs to go as far as the head is, we're going to, thank you, Hanson, I appreciate that. That is a nice be right back. And once we know exactly where that's at, we can drill a hole into it and then set it onto there. All right, so we need to give this guy some ears. Okay, so I put these holes in here because I want the clay to stick to it. Okay, now we could just try and glue them to the outside of the head, and that would be fine, except that, you know, they may pop back off. But adding that little divot in there, that little hole inside there, allows us to add a little bit of glue, and then we can put the Sculpey inside of it. So here we are, just waiting for the glue to run its way down the bottle. There we go. So we get just a little drop inside there, and a little drop inside the other side. Not so much that's going to spill out everywhere. So that's not what we want. And then we're going to create a little knob, shove that in there like that. I like that ear. That's funny. And then shove it in the other side there as well. And then that's going to stick. Okay, so now we can actually manipulate the ears however we would like. Do we want them to have up ears or do we want them to have down ears? I mean, I kind of figure if they're leaf-like, they would be up ears. Okay. I mean, they could be out to the side ears like they were. Okay. And even though I cooled him down in water, he's still pretty warm. But that's okay. It's gonna work. Now he kind of looks like a bat. But we don't want to be a bat, do we? Nah, we don't want to be a bat. Now it kind of looks like a Dobby. One of each. We do that. See, that's the great thing about these pieces. You just you know, it's your imagination. You know, there's nothing that says it has to be one way or the other. You know. Does that look silly? It looks a little silly. Let me give him that one up there like that. We'll bend it over. And there, it's a leaf. You know, he's just made of leaves and stuff. So we're going to just kind of make sure that we get it blended in pretty nice here. There we go, like so. And we're gonna add in the texture. Now I've got stamps and stuff for making nice leaf textures. I could show. Well, I'll show that to you. This is a leaf texture pad. Basically, take a piece of clay. And you lay it in between here like this, and then you just take your other stamp piece here and you press it like that, put your clay away, and then it leaves you with this like leaf texture here like that. Okay, then you can trim it however you'd like to trim it. You know, do you need all these tools? No. You know, they're kind of neat to have, yeah, but you know, and then it's got a back vein on it as well, which is kind of nice. So I can actually take this piece here, if we wanted to, and it's it's silicone. Wait a minute. Is what it's made out of. So we're just going to kind of press it into there, and give us a nice little leaf texture there on his ear. But then I'm going to take my knife here and I'm going to trim up the edges.
This is, excuse me, a damn fine cup.
So, and then we can kind of trim it back in. Of course, you need them all. Good morning, Shay, and good morning, Hanson. So, I just use them because I make a lot of roses and stuff like that as well. So I bought that, but then I found out that I actually like doing it by hand. But I mean, that texture's it's nice. It's a nice texture to have there. So, and then we're going to trim this other side as well. And honestly, if you don't have the stamp, go get a leaf. You know, just go outside. You're surrounded by nature all the time. So you can just go outside, grab a leaf, and use that. You don't need to spend money on a expensive tool when you've got free nature all around you. So, outside is scary. It can be, but there's a lot of fun out there too, guys. It's just there you go. So now I want to double check to make sure we got that texture in there really nicely. There we go. So there's one leaf ear, and then we'll do the same thing on the other side.
Nothing like a great cup of black coffee.
So, Oh, so Hanson says, hey, Sculpey, this was a good idea. I just bought some clay and the 5-in-1 tool using promo code Paul Pape Designs. Well, excellent. Thanks, Hanson. And, you know, honestly, I gotta say, I'm really impressed with the quality of the clay that I got from them. It's like, it takes all the guesswork out of whether or not it's fresh or not. I mean, that's awesome. Look at that beautiful bat ear. I'm gonna fold that over a little bit. So, Mother Nature, the best artist of all. That's right. Go out and enjoy it, guys. Not right now, because I want you to watch this stream, but you know, go out and enjoy it later. So there we go. So now he's got like 2 weird ears that are made of leaves. You know? And then if we want to, we can, you know, so we can just set him back there and cool him off as well. So why don't we go do that? I'm gonna throw him in the oven too. We've got 5 more minutes for the body to come out. So let's do that, and then we can cook these ears really quickly. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to show you a different way to do it. We're going to use a heat gun. Okay. Now, the heat gun is, that's right. The heat gun is a good tool to use, and this is my heat gun. Okay. It's an old one. It's an old Milwaukee. I mean, it's like 1990s old. Okay, but any heat gun will work. The thing is, you need to make sure that you're constantly moving the heat gun, because the problem is if you stay in one spot too long, you will burn the clay. It's not going to really kill you, you know, if you burn the clay, and it's not going to, but it may damage the piece. It may cause bubbling or scorching, which can leave for some ugly spots on the piece. So what we want to do is we want to constantly be moving the tool. Now, I'm noticing I'm looking at this leaf ear here. There we go. I just want to cut this back a little bit so it doesn't look so weird. There we go. I'm going to add a little bit more texture into that. There we go. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is, because it's loud, I'm gonna mute the mic. Okay, you'll still have the music playing, but I'm gonna mute the mic so you don't hear the heat gun. But I'll show you what the technique is. Okay. Now, the way impervious to heat is the answer to your question there. I have it set at about 800 degrees on a heat gun, because that's the core temperature inside the heat gun. It is not the actual heat that's coming out the front of it. It's got a max temperature of 1,000 degrees. If this thing was got to 1,000 degrees, it'd melt the tip of this, but it's about 800 degrees is what the core temperature is, and it's blowing the air out, and that's why you have to constantly move it around on the piece. Okay, now I want to show you guys something, and how do you know that the piece is cured or not when you're using a heat gun? And I'll show you the difference here. Okay, so I'm going to see if I can adjust the focus on the camera again. We're going to autofocus again up close. Okay, now, if you look at this clay has a bit of a sheen to it, okay? It's not a huge sheen, okay, but there is a sheen to this clay, okay? It's got a slightly reflective quality to it, but if you look at the clay next to it, it does not, okay? So if you look at the cooked clay here, it does not have that sheen to it, okay? It is more matte. That is what you can actually see happening when you're using a heat gun. You can actually see the clay going from having a slight sheen to it to a more matte finish, okay? And that's how you can tell. Now, if I was going to like sell this piece, you know, or well, these ears, while they are rigid now, okay, they are not they're not cooked completely, okay? And that's the thing with the heat gun. It's like only really small. Like I could probably cook these leaves completely with a heat gun, but things like these ears, I wouldn't trust them to be completely cooked, okay? So you don't have to worry about the Sculpey being hardened on the inside sachet. That's actually what I'm getting to. I know this is going to go back into the oven and it's going to cook, okay? I know it's going to, because it's in the process. So, but what this is going to do is it's going to allow me to work on this and have this out for now. So it's cooked to a point where I can handle it without it getting broken, okay? If I really press on it and stuff, it'll shatter, okay? It will. But it's rigid enough that I can work around it until I know it's going to go back into the oven, okay? So that's what I'm gonna do. Now I hang the heat gun back up so it doesn't set anything on fire. We don't want to do that again. All right, so now I've got 6 seconds before the other one's done. So I'm gonna go grab the other piece out of the oven, the rest of the body. So give me just a second. Now, here's something that's important to see. Okay, see how wibbly wobbly he is? Because he's heavy at the top. He's cooked, but he's heavy at the top. All right, so he's going to need some support while he's cooling down, okay? So a couple different things that we can do is, again, we can submerge the guy in a little bit of water here. Okay, to hopefully cure those feet off a little bit. All I'm trying to do is just cool down his legs so that he has less mobility, so that he is less tendency to tip over. He's still got some wibbly wobbly to him, but not nearly as bad as he was. You know, the wibbly wobbly is now up in his hips, where he's still nice and warm. Okay, so we're just going to kind of dry that off. Now, what some people don't know is you can actually boil Super Sculpey and cure it. If you set it in boiling water, you can actually cure it. It takes about 10-15 minutes of boiling water. The thing is, you got to constantly boil it to get it there. I've done it a couple times. The results are weird because it doesn't scorch, and it makes it a little whiter on the outside. Like it has a weird texture that it appears on the outside, but you can boil it. If you're going to boil it, though, whatever pot you're using cannot be used again for food. Okay, so that's a big no-no. But you can actually boil it if you want to. Lots of different techniques out there for working with the Sculpey, but we can see he's firming up really, really nicely. Okay, so we know that his head's going to go on there like so. Okay, so I know that right about here, right here, I'm going to need to have a hole drilled into it. So we're saying like right, nice rigid clay here. So right here, right here. So that's about where we were going to want that hole drilled into it. And you know, depending on how I want his head, do I want him looking down, do I want him looking up, do I want him looking off to the side, you know? So I'm going to have him looking straight ahead, so I know that that angle's got to come up to the side. Now, there's a couple different ways that we can do it while we're waiting for his body to cure down. I know that that bit is going to be, this is a 3/8 inch bit, it's about the size of that piece there. I can put this in a drill and actually drill it, or I can do it manually. Okay, just by taking the bit and just pushing it into the clay. Making sure I got that angle about the way I want it. Make sure I'm square on the other way. And then we're just going to twist the clay in here. It's not very hard, okay? I mean, it's hard, but it's not to the point that I can't push this in and manipulate it. I also have a very sharp drill bit here. Now, the reason that I don't want to use a gun is because I have a scar right here that shows you why not to do it. Okay, why would you boil a piece instead of oven cook it? What would be the reason? The reason would be because you don't trust that the clay won't burn inside your oven. No oven, no heat gun, right? Do you think a heat gun could be used to cook it all the way through? It can, but first off, it has to be a really, really thin piece, and it would take multiple heat cool cycles. So you couldn't do it all at one time. Okay, and the reason that is because you will eventually scorch the outside, because when you're baking it, you're actually allowing the heat to permeate all the way through the center, whereas when you are just heat gunning it, the heat is on the outside, and since you're moving it constantly, it's going hot and then the cold, and so to get that heat to be permeated all the way through the center is going to take a lot of time, and so you're going to have to constantly heat it and cool it. Well, what you're going to do is do multiple stages. When I was out shopping for molding stuff last week, I decided against Sculpey because I have no oven and didn't know how long to use the heat gun on it, and I was super scared of the boiling thing. So You can, I mean, a toaster oven will work as well. If you have a small toaster oven, don't microwave it. Do not microwave it. Another option would be like if you're doing a heat gun, like on this piece here, I couldn't a crock pot. I don't know if it's not gonna get hot enough. You gotta boil it. Okay, something just hit me. My oven is a toaster oven, biggish one, and convection. Should I bake on regular setting or convection? Regular setting, convection just means that there's like a fan that's on that's gonna help circulate the air. That would probably be the better bet. If it's just on and then off, basically the heat's on the lower part or on the upper part, and it's going to permeate down to wherever the thermostat is, the temperature, and that's going to heat it, heat the temperature, and that's when it's going to kick it on and off. Convection is going to keep the air circulating, and that's going to make it cook more evenly. So I would say convection. Let me see. Okay, so crockpot's not going to get hot enough to do it that way. Toaster oven will be fine. The other thing, if you're going to heat gun this piece like this big, I would start with a small ball and add and add and add and do layers about 1/8 of an inch thick. Okay, and 1/8 of an inch you can cook completely with a heat gun. Okay, so you're just going to keep adding on to your layers. And honestly, if you're learning anatomy, that's a great way, because you're going to start with the bone structure, then you're going to start with the muscles, then you're going to add a little bit of layer of skin, and just kind of build up like that. But as long as you're using 1/8 of an inch at a time, you should be able to heat gun it fine. All right, so there's our dude. Now that neck is way too long because I need to open this up a little bit because this has such a wide taper to it. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my X-Acto blade here, my number 11 craft blade, and we're just going to open this up. Use a new blade, guys. You don't want to use old blades, because if you have to force the blade, your blade is dull, and you don't want to hurt yourself, guys. Okay, so make sure you use a sharp enough blade that it'll cut through the clay. Okay, and if you notice, I'm working at a slight angle so that I can get that taper in there. All right. Yes, 1/8 inch thick layers for a heat gun. Yes. There we go. You see, we can still have him like cockeyed a little bit, so like he's listening. Okay. All right, or we can have him just like looking straight up. We can have him looking down. We can have him looking off to the side. You know, whatever we'd like to do. And just have it on there. So I kind of like the cockeyed look to him. So if I want it to be that cockeyed, I'm going to actually take a little bit more out on one side. Okay, so I can actually put it on there and have him be like, brr. Okay. All right. Okay, or drop it in boiling water and boil hard for 15-ish minutes. Probably move it around some so the bottom doesn't burn to the pan. No, if you're going to boil it, you don't need to worry about it because the water will circulate around the piece. It should be fine. So you should be all right with the boiling. It's a weird technique. I mean, honestly, try it with a small piece first to find out what the finish is, because the finish is going to be different than if you air bake it. Okay, just FYI, it will be different. Okay, so the other thing I want to do with this is, because I want the staff to be in the location I want it to be permanently, I'm also going to drill a small hole into the base here. So I'm going to get my handy dandy drill set here. All right. Now, if I wanted to, I could have figured out what the hole is going to be there before I cooked the base, and just actually stuck a hole in there like we did for his ears and put this in here. But I'm doing it after the fact, so I just need to find a bit that is large enough that I can create the hole around it. Close enough. Alright, so now what we're going to do is we're going to drill a small hole in the base here. You can just use my hands. You don't want to use a power tool here, guys, because it's gonna do bad things. You're going to over drill really quickly. Forgot that his head wasn't attached yet. Thank goodness I caught it. Alright. And we're just going to get the cooked clay and the bit out of the way. Can hardened Sculpey be sanded? Absolutely. Yes. Oh yes. It can be sculpted. It can, if it's cooked completely, it can actually be milled or turned, but you've got to make sure that it is a solid piece before you do that. You got to make sure that it is completely 100% thoroughly cooked, especially if you're turning it or anything like that. But yes, you can polish it really nicely. There we go. So now we got that stick that's going to be in there. That's going to be his walking stick there. Turned, you say? Yes, yes, you can turn it. I would strongly recommend you got to turn it really, really slow and use really, really sharp tools. Okay, not so slow that you can see the rotation, but don't spin it super, super fast. Okay, no, you can turn it on a lathe. You can. I would recommend like 400 to 600 RPM. Okay, or I mean, you can get it up a little higher. Test it, because what's going to happen is if you find, because when you're this is what happens. I've done it before. I've turned the pieces before, and then you can polish them, and they turn out like super, super shiny. It's really, really nice. The problem is if you take a piece of clay like this, and you know, and you see that split right there. Okay, I can roll this together and make that split disappear inside there off the surface, but it's inside it. So when you're turning it and you get your turning tool on there, if you catch that, you'll chunk it out really well. Try 750. I mean, it should be okay. I've done it before. I don't remember the exact speed. It's been years since I've done it, but I have turned clay before, and because I was making a wand, and so I needed to do something, and so and it turns out nice, and you can polish it. You don't even need to polish it with sandpaper. You can polish it with a piece of denim. Okay, and it'll polish, and that thing will be like mirror shiny. Okay, but you want to make sure that it is cooked completely, and you want to make sure that there is something rigid running through the center. Okay, you can't just chuck this and spin it and then try and cut it, because it will have some flexibility to it, no matter how much it is. Like a pen tube, yes, you can do a pen tube, that'd be fine. And that's the really nice thing, is you can actually take multiple colors of the Sculpey and create a nice marbling effect and then polish that off. So anyways, well, this is when form trying to copy you off in my own creepy little world. Or this is for when you're trying to copy. I mean, you do it, you know, I don't just copy away. I don't know, like some, you know, it's only so much people can buy from me, right? I don't know. So, all right, so we have this staff where we want it. We got his bat head looking weird leafy head, kind of cockeyed over there. And so we want to have his arm. His arm's going to be, you know, like here, holding onto the staff like that. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to add that little bit of arm. So I've got a piece of clay here. All right, and I'm working it in my palms. What I'm doing is I'm pushing the material and also turning it at the same time. So I'm basically collapsing all those air pockets that are in there, but also creating a nice flat piece, almost like it's a sphere again, you know. But I don't want to fold in any air into this thing. I want it to be as solid as possible. Okay, so there we go. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to taper that out just a little bit, and then I can take a tool if I want to. Take one of my sharp, pokey tools here, not that one, this one. Kind of stick it in there to kind of give myself an idea of where to start, and then I can push this up against the figure there. Now I'm going to take that back off. Okay, add a little bit of glue. I'm going to take his head off, because otherwise we're going to do that to it and drop it. Don't want to drop his head. So, and again, we just want to add it to the very tip here of the piece, because we're gonna sleeve the Super Sculpey over it, and we don't want to push too much glue out. So we don't want to glue the entire surface, because once this goes on here, it's gonna push that glue up into place. Okay. Now obviously he doesn't need to be that beefy of an arm. I'm just kind of giving myself some clay to start with. And again, anatomy helps if you guys know it. All right, but it's not an absolute prerequisite. I mean, start somewhere. Enjoy what you do. Okay. If we wanted to, we could make his arms the same as his legs. You know, maybe we'll do that on this hand. So he's got like kind of one froggy hand, froggy, batty looking one, and then he'll have kind of a rooty, kind of branchy looking arm on the other side there. So we're going to take our tool here and we're going to blend in the clay so that it matches up with the rest of the body. Okay, we can take those pieces out. Keep a chunk of clay over there so we can kind of remove the excess. He's going to have one bulbous muscle up here on the top, and that is going to be to allow him to raise and lower his arm. Okay. So we're going to have one muscle structure up here. Okay, and then he's going to have one on the front of his arm. Oops, keep bumping everything here. But you're going to have one on the front of the arm here, but you're also going to have one on the back of the arm. This allows you to extend your arm out. That's what this muscle does. And then this muscle here allows you to contract your arm back. Okay, so that's what you need those two muscles for as well. When in doubt, check yourself. You know, you can feel, and then do movements, and you can feel all those muscles moving. Okay, and he's got an elbow. The elbow is actually it's the tendon connector on your arm where it comes down. So we've got, you know, it's just a place for your tendon that runs between this muscle here, this muscle structure on the back of your arm, to the front of your arm. It just allows a good connection point. That's what that's for. And then we want to make sure that he's got some kind of muscle here on the forearm, because his arm is contracted. So as his arm comes forward, this muscle is going to contract. Okay, so it's going to be larger here. Okay. So we just want to kind of put a little bit extra meat right there on his forearm, or on his upper arm, not his forearm. And we're just going to blend those two together. Okay, because that's how that muscle is contracting. Okay, it doesn't need to be contracting a lot. This one on the back, so he's going to have a little bit of the bone structure here, but he's going to have that muscle in the back here that's going to stretch down to the elbow, because that's where that muscle is. Now this one here that raises and lowers the arm, it's going to reach around from the back of the shoulder area, because that's where it connects. Okay, and it is what controls the up and down movement. So when you're moving your arm up, this muscle is going to contract. When you bring it down, it's going to loosen back up again. Okay, but it's got to be able to maintain a lot of weight. That's why this muscle is bigger, because if you're trying to lift something and this muscle had no thickness to it, you're not going to be able to lift anything very heavy. Okay, so you got to have a little bit of thickness in this muscle. Now it actually does separate here at the top like that. It's like a little V muscle type of structure there. But I mean, this guy's paunchy. He's not buff, so it's he doesn't need to have like all the defined muscles in his arms and stuff like that. So okay, and then we've got the forearm, and the forearm consists of two muscle structures, or two bone structures. There's one on the fore, and that allows you to rotate your wrist. Okay, if you only had one bone in here, you couldn't move your arm, you couldn't move your wrist. Okay, it's the fact that both of these bones are able to shift around each other. That's what gives you this rotational movement. All right. Now, you also have muscles that run in both directions. So you've got a giant muscle cluster here on the top of your arm, as well as on the underside of your arm. Okay, and again, they're attached to the bones up here, and they move around. But you got to make sure that you keep these muscle structures in here. So you got this muscle structure here, which connects over to this part of your wrist, and then you have the muscle structure underneath, which connects to this side. And as you can feel it when it moves, it's sliding. These muscles actually stay connected to the elbow at the exact same place, and you notice it's just rotates around those two bones. Okay, so it's the same thing on any kind of sculpture, and it's just knowing that little bit of anatomy is going to help you to make your figures look better. Okay, so now we have that. I'm going to take that little bit of a hand there, and we'll wrap it around there. Okay, so he's going to kind of hold on to it there. Now, obviously, that's a fairly wimpy looking hand. That's okay. We're gonna make that hand beefier. Now, we may not get to painting it today. We may just be able to sculpt it. That's okay. We'll paint it some other time. Okay, so we're gonna give this dude, should we give him like long, like froggy fingers? So we'll have like the big fat pad on the end of it. Now the way that the fingers actually connect, okay, so like on frogs and stuff like that, they have a palm, but it's very, very small because these bone and the finger bones are a lot longer. And what it does is it allows these muscles to be joined together, or the bones to be joined together with muscle and tendon, and then each of your individual fingers are able to adapt, okay? But the longer that these are, the more they've got to wrap around something. So, you know, if you've got like super, super long fingers, they're gonna need to go somewhere when they're wrapping around objects. So, Shay asks, how's my thumb doing? I injured my thumb the beginning of this week. It's actually doing a lot better, thank you. So what I may do is I may have it so that his fingers come out like that. So like he's gripping it, but he only needs to grip it like this, you know. So like he doesn't need to wrap his fingers all the way around it. So says, I'm glad to hear it. Well, thank you. Yes, it was. So what I'm doing here is I'm just creating like the pad. So I'm like pushing a little dot there, and then pinching, kind of stretching it out. So I have longer fingers, and then I'm finding a joint. Okay. So that's going to give me all my joints, and then that last joint I'm going to bend up a little bit as well. Okay. Actually, that one may bend all the way around there like that. Okay, so then what we want to do now is we want to blend these into a palm. I should glue that in place, Paul. Yes, I just hit the camera. Now, if we want to, we can come in there and make all sorts of joints and stuff in the fingers. We can do all that. I'm going to bypass it for now. But the last thing we need is he needs an opposable thumb, right? I mean, critters mostly don't have opposable thumbs, but since we're making these guys human-esque, I'm going to give him a thumb as well. Put that back out there. Now I want to make sure we get this nice and smooth because I hate to have them be rough. And then what I'm probably going to end up doing is we'll do a single bake on this guy. So we'll get it baked to a point where we're happy with the look of it. And then I might come in and add a little bit more structure to the meat of it. So I'm going to take I'm going to drop, what's that material? Hey, relax. This is all Sculpey. It's all of this material is different varieties of Sculpey. So we have Super Sculpey, which is the flesh tone color, and then we have some Sculpey Firm and some Sculpey Medium on this. So there's all those different materials. So we can put the head back on there. Paul, do you know what the difference is between Sculpey and Super Sculpey? The only thing I could figure out at the store is Super takes more time in the oven, I think. Super Sculpey is a more dense material than regular Sculpey. A lot of the like Sculpey 1 versus, or is it called, and then there's Sculpey 3, which are the colored versions of Sculpey. I was looking at Sculpey 3 and Original Sculpey. Original Sculpey is white, okay, and that's going to be the wider Sculpey. I think it's a less fine granular polymer in there, like it's more grainy. I don't think it's as refined of a product and not as dense of a product, whereas it's a lot like ultralight, but it doesn't float. Okay, Sculpey 3 is like the newer version, and it's the colored version of Super Sculpey, but I because they make like all different, they like make like artisan version and stuff like that. And my feeling is, and honestly, I should ask the company and find out the exact answer. But in my using it, it feels as though Super Sculpey is more, it's more dense and finer of a material. It's like if you're mixing sand or cement, you're going to have like a finer powder, and it's going to be a finer quality material. And that's what I feel that Super Sculpey is, whereas the other ones are just like a little bit under. Now, but if you get like the artisan versions of it, it's like Super Sculpey or Super Sculpey Firm, but in colors. And so I think there's a big thing. Now, like 3 is kind of like original Sculpey mixed with color. So yes, it's more powder, and the color is better for streamers. Well, yes, I know the streamers are, or the color, it makes everything stand out a lot better when you're streaming. I understand that, but okay, so his hand does not want to grip that, so I'm going to add a little bit of glue to the post here, so we can actually get him to grip the, piece there. There we go. Actually, let's turn that phone down. Like that. Okay, so there we go. All right, so there's the one arm. There's a propensity for talking. So, oh yeah, it's yeah. Brilliant says that streaming with just straight white, it will make your camera go crazy. Yeah, and it's because of the white balance and stuff like that. Yes, that's absolutely true. Yes, but let's see if I can remember your question there. So, did you get any of my response there, Shay? The difference is that it is it's a higher quality. Super Sculpey is a higher quality material for better end result products than Sculpey 1. Okay, Sculpey 1 is like an intro clay. It's not going to be like it's not a higher grade. Okay, it's like the difference between buying regular and ethanol and stuff. Now I noticed that my stream kind of slow is jumping around there, so I apologize if the streaming starts to stutter here. All right, so now we're gonna do this other hand here. Okay, I'm just gonna have it sitting by his side there, just because we're at 1:40 in the afternoon here, so I want to make sure that we get everything done. Got 20 more minutes here, so we got the same thing. So we're gonna take the arm here. We're going to sleeve it up there just a little bit. Okay, and then do the same thing where we take the glue. All right, and then we're going to sleeve this piece on there. Do the same thing with this arm. So we'll just have this arm. We'll just kind of have it down by his side like that. Okay. This glue is bakeable. Yes. Is it boilable? Yes. Super glue. It's because super glue is not water sensitive. I mean, it is. That's what kicks off the catalyst. But once it's catalyzed, it is not sensitive to water. So. Yeah, so yes, it is usable and such. Again, I don't know why my stream is jumping all over the place, and I apologize for that, guys. All right, so we are there we go. So now we are sculpting the second arm on here. I'm just going to go with a standard looking arm. I think it's going to be fine, rather than doing one that's roots. Giving us our muscle structures like we were asking for to Petite. Yes. Thank you, Kilroy. All right, same thing. We're just going to blend in this second side over here. Same tools here, and we're going to cut in a little bit because it's a little too wide underneath here. Just remove that little bit of clay there. we go. Yes, it is just super glue. Super glue is a great binder for clay, uncured Super Sculpey, or just Sculpey in general, polymer clay in general, to cured or other pieces. You know, like you can use it attached to pretty much anything. But I do use it a lot, so, which is why I buy it in bulk. Just gonna basically add in the second arm. It's just repeating the same thing that we did on the other side, guys. It's nothing, no new techniques or anything like that. It's just mirroring the other side. So you go like that. All right. So we can put the guy's head on. And he'll be like that. Beige. Must be ecru color. They're sold out of white. I said I'd choose. I'm still poking around. There you go. So then there's our dude. Now with the neck, you know, we'll basically we need to cook the arms first before we add the head on there, and that's going to help give stability to this whole piece when it comes out. Okay. And then once we're done, we're going to add the head to it. So let me go throw this in the oven real quick. Now we can cook that for 15 minutes. Okay. And then we will add the head and the neck on there. And then once we're done, we can, I'll end up cooking him probably for about 45 minutes total at the very end, okay? I find that the beige is easier to paint than the grays are, because unless you're starting with something that needs to be a darker tone, okay? So I would say that to me it's easier, but you should in general just create you should base coat them anyways, as opposed to just doing the Sculpey, painting right on top of the Sculpey. So always do some kind of base coat on it as well. Otherwise the paint will have a tendency to fall off. All right, dreadlocks, your viney dreadlocks. Okay, we can do that while we're waiting here. We will do that giveaway towards the end there. So let's actually work with, we can work with the green, I guess. We can do the green. So yes, Grim's going to set that up for me, and then we'll do a nice giveaway here. So, all right. So I'm going to do slightly twisted vinery. Should we have it come underneath? Should we have it come underneath his hair? Yeah, there we go, like that. So he's got the leaves on top, and then he's got this part underneath. So yeah, let's do that. All right. So do the same thing, but you can see, yeah, I'm a little warm here, so you can see that the green actually kind of rubs off a little bit. The color will rub off basically, but we're gonna make these out of the bendy clay, so that as they are going to be low, they can actually be bent and kind of played with. That'll actually give it a nice little texture piece to have. And I'm just adding a piece to connect them all together here, because I didn't glue these into place. They're sticking pretty well, but I know that if we're playing with them, if they kind of jiggle and whatnot, they will eventually pop off, and then we'll have to glue them back on. So I'm adding this base here to make sure that we can actually glue them back on, and they'll fit right back where they were. And it's under the head, so we won't really see it. Let's just kind of help connect all these pieces together here. Alright, so I'm going to go pull the body out real quick. Alright, so then there is his body, and we can put the head on. We're going to have the head kind of tip off to one side, so I want the dreads to kind of fall off that way. You can tell, because he's hot, that he's got a little bit of jiggle to him. Okay, let's make sure that those fit around that way. There we go. So then that's our finished piece. So there we go, guys. We have created from scratch using Sculpey products this nice little cool dude here. And so yeah, from scratch, using not using an armature, but we can next time we will use an armature and do something a little bit more sophisticated. But this just kind of gives you the idea of what you can do using different Sculpey products, as well as the ins and outs of how Sculpey works. Again, thank you for joining me on this sponsored stream by Polyform, the makers of Super Sculpey. I do appreciate you guys hanging out with me today. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask me. You can follow me on the social media. Again, I'll put those links up in the chat there, as well as you can message me on my Discord. So if you have any... thank you for the tender vittles there, Zoom Zoom. Thank you very much. I appreciate all of you guys sticking with me and sitting through this while we created this fun little guy here. Not 100% sure what he is, but he was fun to make regardless. Until next time, remember to work smarter, not harder.